Good evening. We would like to call the January 12th Planning Commission meeting to order, and we will begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. If you could stand, and we're going to call on Commissioner De Almeida to lead us. I pledge allegiance. Thank you. All right, so public comments. Do we have any open public comments? Done tonight. Thank you. Our first presentation item will be for our Jerry, who's leaving us. Gail, do you have the presentation, or am I just going to, did you want me to? I can go on and on about Jerry.
Yes, we're going to ask you to go on a little bit. We do have a commendation for Jerry, but Jerry Verplank was appointed to the Planning Commission by the City Council in 2005. So he's been on the Commission for the past 12 years and has served as the chair in 2007 and 2012 and 3 times served as the vice chair. We certainly thank and commend Jerry for his service to the city. And I believe you have the actual commendation there. Apparently we don't have that, but we do have a gift. So if we could have Mr. Verplank come up to the podium.
Jerry, on behalf of all of us in the City of Lake Forest, we'd like to thank you for all your work. You've been a great source for just knowledge and history with the city, and we just wish you well and Godspeed.
Thank you.
You're going to have to call in with those updates on that team, Jerry. All righty, great. Okay, consent calendar. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
There's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. Please vote. All right, we are going to move on to our first item.
Okay, our first item under public hearings, number 3, plan sign program for the hotel, the Homewood Suites Hampton Inn, signage located on Lake Center Drive. And Amy Stonich has a report.
Good evening, Chair, of the Commission. Tonight I'll be presenting the application proposal for Plan Sign Program 114982. On December 8, 2016, the Planning Commission approved an application to demolish an existing 2-story office building and construct a new 5-story dual-branded hotel called Homewood Suites Hampton Inn with subterranean parking garage. The project site is at 23021 Lake Center Drive. It's located on the corner of Lake Center Drive and Lake Forest Drive, just north of the 5 freeway, near the northbound exit. The plan sign program includes a total of 7 signs on the hotel. These consist of 6 building signs, 2 of which are freeway-oriented signs, and 1 monument sign. A plan sign program is required because the proposal includes freeway-oriented signs and the number of signs proposed exceeds the number permitted on the project site. Exceeds the 3 on the project site. Because this is a dual-branded hotel, the applicant is proposing 2 freeway-oriented signs and 2 signs on the east elevation facing Lake Center Drive. Although the number of signs exceeds the sign ordinance, the overall area of these signs along the freeway is consistent with the 200 square foot maximum. The signs along the east elevation facing Lake Center Drive will also represent the dual branding and do not exceed the overall maximum area. 2 small signs are proposed on the entryway, and a monument sign, which is consistent with the city's sign code, is proposed at the entry. No signs are proposed in the north and south elevations. Staff has worked with the applicant, and the signs have been designed so that the size of the sign is proportional with the facade and would not detract from the overall architecture of the building. Overall, the proposed signs are consistent with the city's design guidelines and will not negatively impact the aesthetics of the site or surrounding areas. In summary, the plan sign program will provide coordinated on-site signage for the hotel that is consistent with surrounding uses. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the plan sign program application with the associated resolutions and conditions of approval. Thank you for your consideration tonight. If you have any questions, I'm available, and the applicant is in the audience.
Thank you, Amy. Do we have any questions of staff? Okay, hearing none, do we have any speakers?
Narendra Patel.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here to answer any questions. I think Amy covered it in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Does anybody have any questions of the applicant? Wow, lucky. Okay, let's, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry that we had to do this in 2 months.
No, it's good to see you guys again. Happy
Yeah,
New Year.
maybe next month you can come back with something else. Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to bring it back up here. Any comments?
Make a motion to close the public hearing and bring this matter up here and approve staff's recommendation.
It's been a motion.
I'll second that motion.
All right, let's vote. Aren't you glad you were first on the agenda? Okay, so we'll just move right along. Thank you very much. Good luck with the new hotel.
Item 4, site development permit to establish True Vita Wellness, a medical office use located within an existing office building on Bircher Drive. And Amanda Loffer has a report this evening.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. The item before you tonight is a site development permit to establish True Vita Wellness within an existing 6,065 square foot building located within the Lake Forest Business Park at 23726 Bircher Drive. True Vita Wellness is a behavioral health counseling center that provides services to patrons that have recently recovered from substance abuse. The subject tenant space is currently divided into multiple offices and conference rooms that will be used for individual and group counseling sessions and business activities. Based on the definitions in the Lake Forest Municipal Code, the proposed business would be classified as a medical office and would be permitted in the Industrial Park Zoning District. However, because the proposed establishment cannot meet the parking requirement for a general medical office of 1 parking space for every 150 square feet of gross floor area, a parking study was submitted to determine a specific parking requirement based on the unique operational characteristics of the business. As described in the staff report and parking study, there are 7 employees that will be working at this location at any given time. Employees will provide transportation to and from the facility for all patrons by 4 company vehicles. The Lake Forest Business Park provides 1 parking space for every 250 square feet of gross floor area. Based on the square footage of the proposed tenant space for True Vita Wellness, 24 spaces would be allotted to this tenant space. As described in the parking study and based on the unique operational characteristics of the business, a maximum of 11 spaces would be required for True Vita Wellness. An additional condition of approval has been added to ensure that the number of vehicles associated with True Vita Wellness does not exceed the 24 spaces that are allotted to the tenant space. This proposed use is consistent with the allowable uses in the zoning code and is compatible with the surrounding business park. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the site development permit, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and the applicant and representatives are in the audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So, any questions of staff on this item? All right, how about speakers?
Vince Bindi?
Hello, my name is Vincent Bindi, and I'm one of the co-owners of...
I'm sorry, I failed. If you could just state your name and your city of residence.
Oh, okay.
And then just remind everybody that there's 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes, okay.
yeah.
Wow, okay. My name is Vincent Bindi, and my city of residence is Laguna Niguel. I'm one of the co-owners of True Vita Wellness. And...
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you again. Are you the applicant?
Yes, I'm the applicant.
Then your 3 minutes are waived. You can have as
Oh.
long as you need.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. So what I wanted to say is several things. One, as I understand it, the city doesn't have a parking zoning designation for a recovery facility, so we were, I guess, classified as medical. But I did want to clarify that what goes on is simply counseling with therapists and counselors, all licensed and certified. And our patrons are there Monday through Friday from 8. We have 2 shifts from 8 to 11:30 in the morning, Monday through Friday, and then another shift from 1 to 5 p.m. So it's daytime office-type hours, and it's office meetings, small group meetings, and one-on-one individual counseling. And that's all that does take place within this facility, within our office organization. The other thing I wanted to mention is, as Amanda already mentioned, is that as I understand it, we're allocated 24 spaces, but based on the traffic study that was done, that we participated in, a licensed certified engineer conducted that study, we're only using about 50% of our allotted capacity for this office building. And then he also did the study to see what impact would take place in the entire office complex, and that was well below the maximum he accounted for. What's currently being used, he did a traffic count, a parking count all day long, and he took the worst case scenario of the number of cars that were there, and then he added the number of cars that our facility would add to that count, and then he also added the number of cars that would be added if the vacant offices were occupied, which are not. And that total, and then he added 5% overage. I guess that's what they normally do. And that total, that grand total, was still quite a bit under the maximum allocated parking requirements. And other than that, I just wanted to say that we, run a very tight and disciplined office organization, and plan to be an excellent tenant and business operator in the city of Lake Forest.
Before you sit down, I'll ask the other commissioners if they have any questions of you, or might hear from others and might bring you back up later.
Okay, absolutely.
And Commissioner Mark.
Just a couple questions with regards to, like, your clients.
Yes.
Where do they come from? Do they live in their own homes? Do they have group homes? Where will they be picked up? Do they pick them up at their houses? Do they have a designated spot they meet and bring them in? How does that kind of work?
Well, yes, most of everything you said is roughly true. They live in homes with their parents, with significant others. Sometimes they'll be living in transitional housing within the local community, Lake Forest, Missionville, Laguna Hills, Laguna Niguel, Tustin, things of that nature.
So the van will then go to the individual houses and pick them up.
Yeah.
They don't drive somewhere and they all pick them up as a group.
Absolutely. It's part of our policy procedure. When they agree to come to our facility, we have an admittance agreement which states many things, but one of the things it states is that they will not drive to and from the facility. We pick them up, and we have 2 minivans and 2 sedans for company vehicles.
Okay. And then do you have court-ordered clients? In other words, that as part of their probation or part of their sentence, they need to take so many hours of drug counseling?
No, we do not. We only take at-will clients, people who volunteer to come to our facility. We do not participate in the probate criminal system at all.
Okay. And then how long are the clients at your facility? I know you said there's various shifts. Are they there for the whole 5 hours or whatever?
Yeah, 4 hours in the morning, and then we drive them back to their home. Maybe they'll stop for lunch on the way back if that group and the counselor who's driving them wish to. They'll stop at a local restaurant and then take them to their residences for the afternoon and nighttime, wherever they're living. And then we have another afternoon shift from 1 to 5.
Okay. So let's say they have a counseling session with an individual and it lasts an hour. Then what?
Well, we have a very disciplined program that lasts 4 hours that's approved by the state of California. Individual counseling, group counseling, 12-step groups, sometimes smart recovery, cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing. So we have a series of things that happens in that 4 hours. And it changes from day to day, too. It's not the same program every single day.
Now, I'm sure there's breaks, smoke breaks, whatever. Are they constantly on the inside the building?
Yes.
Are they allowed to, as
That's
people
also-
would be concerned with wandering the neighborhoods
Loitering,
and that
yes,
kind of
yes.
stuff? So
That's also
maybe you
part
could
of-
answer how that works.
Yeah. Also, part of their agreement to work with us, the admittance agreements, and we do not allow loitering outside. We have a meeting room, we have a reception room, we have a lounge, and we also have a break room. And we offer things, and we have a little video arcade in one of the rooms, so they can relax, and we have books and TVs, and we're going to have wireless internet connection so they can, communicate on their phone, things of that nature. So during their break, they can stay, involved and active inside our facility. It's a large office, which we're only going to be really using probably half of the office, and the rest of it will make available for, a place to take a break inside the building.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have provisions for those that smoke? Do they smoke outside somewhere, or how do you deal with that?
Well, for the 4 hours that they're there, we have them make a promise that they're not going to smoke. So they can smoke when they go home, they can smoke at night, they can smoke elsewhere, but in that particular office location, they will not smoke.
Commissioner Domeno, do you have any questions?
Yeah. What's the average number of clients you propose to have per day?
It'll be anywhere from 10, 12 to as a maximum of 18 in the morning and 12 to 18 in the afternoon.
Is there a specific age range of these clients?
So it typically runs from 21 to high 50s, in that range, mostly in the 20s and early 30s.
Okay. And the reason that they're not driving to the facility is because they may not have a valid driver's license?
No, I mean, some might not have one, but it's just our policy to do that, to bring them there so that they're on time. And the way we set it up is our counselors take the vehicle to their home, and we let the counselors rotate every week who drives. We let them take their vehicle to their home, and then part of their immersion into being a normal citizen society is the counselors with them in the car, in the minivan, and starting just a normal routine of interacting with each other and sharing what they did for dinner the night before and what they thought about that night. So they just began the process of communicating with each other in the van, or in the minivan or the sedan.
All right. There's another tenant in the same complex that has submitted a letter to the city opposing your project. Are you familiar with this letter?
I'm familiar with one letter. I don't know if it's the same letter.
Well,
yeah.
Do you have any comments on that?
Well, is it the letter about the parking and?
Yeah, the assertion is that approving your project would have a negative impact on the rest of the center.
Well, from what I read, it was the parking. He was worried about the parking,
Yes.
having too much parking. Well, I don't know what to say. Based on our analysis and what we're going to control, it'll be about 11 to 12 parking spaces required, and our offices allows us to have 24. So I'm a little confused by that argument. It's funny, about 12 years ago, I had a friend of mine who had he was an architect, and he had a drafting firm, and they drew pictures of homes on computers. That's what they did, and that's your basic office type of usage. And this particular office as it sits right now, we're not going to make any modifications to the office, by the way, but this current office has, if I'm not mistaken, 17 offices and a giant room. So technically, if my old friend who owned the drafting company were to move in there, he could have 24 employees with 24 cars. And that drafting firm from 14 years ago, there was cars leaving all day long. They were dropping off drawings, delivering CAD CAMs, floppy disks to the blueprint company around the corner. Traffic in and out all day long. Our traffic pattern's very, very low compared to that. We don't have deliveries. They're not allowed to leave the facility from 8 till 11:30. So I read the letter, but I just don't see that is a valid argument. Our traffic exposure or pattern of parking will be well within the limits of what we're allotted.
That concludes my comments.
One more from Tom, but only one. If he asks more, then we're going to pull him.
Are there any circumstances where one of your clients would be driving to that facility?
I suppose, if they didn't wake up and we knocked on the door and they still weren't there and they called us up a half an hour later and they still wanted to come, I suppose that could possibly happen. But for the most, like I said, that is our policy, that they do not drive and we pick them up and return them every single day, 5 days a week.
Do you have clients now for this facility?
We have another facility which is a higher level of care, so yes, we do have clients in that higher level of care, yes.
So the clients that would be coming to Lake Forest, are they new clients that you're going to go out and
No, there will be 95% of them will be clients that we've already been working with. This is the lowest. In this industry, there's 4 levels of care, and this is the lowest level. This is the 4th last level of care, the simplest level of care. So
you've started with here, and now you're going to, or maybe we'll start
Yes,
here, and we're
yes.
going to go, okay.
Yeah,
So
what
you're ready
we're applying for is
to,
the lowest level of care. So the highest level of care is another facility we own and operate.
Okay.
So 95% of our clients will be in our guidance.
so you're having success, and you're having to move them along.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
That's-
great. All right, well, I'm going to, oh, wait, one more over
Sure.
here.
Sorry, the one other question that I sort of had before. So at your other facility, you possibly would have court-ordered
No.
people, and then they've made it to where they passed probation, and now they're at the recovery thing, or?
No, that's also at-will voluntary facility. So we don't cater to that.
So the other facility would be the beginning step, and now they've made it to
Yes.
their senior year, as it were, in this?
Yeah, for lack of
They
a better
graduate,
description.
so to
Yeah.
speak. Okay.
They're graduated, if you will.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So now we're going to maybe move on to more. We're going to check with Peggy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have Nick Rashti.
Remember your name and city of residence. And now you get 3 minutes.
I'm actually the other co-owner. But I'll try to do it in
3.5
minutes. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time and allowing Vincent and myself, obviously, to come here and speak on behalf of our good business, True Vita Wellness. My name is Nick Rashti. I am the other owner of True Vita Wellness. I had the operations of the business, the day-to-day. I just wanted to, I know Vince elaborated a lot on, on some of the questions you had, but what I wanted to share with you is that, our clients are basically a college football player, who hurt his knee and now he's recovered and he's going on with life. These are people who have, passed that phase of their life and they're being reintroduced to society. We all know someone, our family, our friends, an acquaintance that has gone through this, and we do good work for the community. We, basically are licensed by the state of California to come in and truly help these people move on to the good path of their life and reintroduce them back to society so they can go back to their families, to their husbands, their wives, their brothers or sisters. We're a Christian-based, obviously, wellness center, and I personally take our business very seriously. We arguably, at least I like to think so, have one of the the best wellness centers around. We don't have any dings against us. I personally am a father of 2 daughters. I don't even have a speeding ticket, and I'm in this I'm in this world for a big cause that's even bigger than me, and I'm going to share with you what that is. 22 years ago, my parents had suffered from in an armed robbery from someone that was abusing drugs and gone all the way with it. And he robbed my family, killed my mom, and shot my father. My father since then is paralyzed because of it. So I have taken a life mission to make a difference, so another family like mine doesn't suffer. So if a guy can be healed, he doesn't, he's healed. He doesn't go down that path anymore. So I take it upon myself that it's my absolute calling to make a difference in these people's lives, and that's why we take our industry, our business very seriously, and it's very, impactful to us, to me personally. So, that being said, I just wanted to, briefly share that with you and who I am and why we are doing what we're doing, because I believe we're doing an unbelievable service to the community to, send people back in a good path of their life that they deserve to live for a long time.
Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
All right. Does anybody have any questions of our applicant? Well, thank you. I think we have a couple more speakers.
Perfect.
All right. We may call you back up.
No problem. Thank you. Okay.
Matt Conrad.
Evening, Commissioners. My name is Matt Conrad. I'm a resident of Mission Viejo. I'm also the founder and managing partner of Conrad LLP in Lake Forest. We own 2 buildings. I personally own 2 buildings in the complex. One of our buildings and our main entrance is directly next door. Actually, we share a wall with the proposed facility the applicant wants to move to. As an aside, I served as a commissioner for the city of Mission Viejo, so I know that a lot of times it's a thankless job, but I appreciate your service, and having that experience I know was tremendously helpful for me. So like I said, one of the buildings that we own is directly adjacent or next door to the subject property. We're opposed to the approval for the exemption of the parking in this case due to the parking issues that we've had with the previous tenant that was in the building. And I think reading over the parking study, and I looked over it, I think the assumptions made are not reasonable and don't stand up to a critical review of their operations. I think was mentioned, I previously provided a letter in opposition, and all of you should have received that. So I'm asking that, I don't think the applicant is entitled to an exemption in this case, and I would respectfully ask that you do not approve the application.
Thank you. Peggy?
Jeff Olson.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Olson. I reside in Newport Beach. For 20-some years, I resided in Lake Forest, and for 30-plus years, I reside in the building that we're discussing tonight, and I'm one of the owners of that building. I also used to own Mr. Conrad's building, and he mentioned that the parking was a problem with the previous tenant. When he bought the building from us, the current building we're talking about was vacant, so there couldn't have been any problem. It was just my partner and I still went in there occasionally. I'm requesting that you approve this tenant tonight. When I heard who wanted to lease it, I was excited. As a recovering alcoholic and addict myself, I thought, well, what a great purpose. I've met these guys, and they're excellent people. I see no reason not to approve it. When they first applied, they went to the board of the association and asked for approval. And within one day, I got an email from the manager saying that they're not allowed. It doesn't fit a business use. And what I got from that, what it really was not in my backyard. We don't want all these drug addicts in our backyard. And these guys are beyond that. They're on the way to recovery, and I think the new clients for me run an excellent business, and I request that you approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. We're going to call on the next. We may call you back up. Getting a list of those who are going to call back up.
Dr. John Byrock.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. John Byrock. I reside in Long Beach, California. I'm the clinical director and clinical supervisor at True Vita Wellness. I have heard coming up over and over and over again about the types of clients that we work with. I could not help but be reminded of just about a month ago. I was walking with my granddaughter, who's 19, and she had just graduated from Edison High School in Costa Mesa, and she was talking about her fellow students. And she said one of the students, a close girlfriend of hers, who's a soccer player, was going to receive some scholarships to college, but she hurt her foot in a soccer game. She was put on prescription medications. She is now a heroin addict. This was one of 4 different friends of my granddaughters. These are the kinds of clients that we're dealing with. We're not dealing with clients that are shooting up behind a garbage can. We've had IRS agents. This is the, you better put that 3-minute button on for me, if you don't mind. These are the types of clients that we're dealing with, ex-IRS agents, college professors. I've been a college professor. That's why that 3 minutes might be appropriate. I've taught at UCLA in the Graduate School of Social Welfare. I have taught at Cal State Northridge. I have taught at Antioch University. And I have been the clinical director and supervisor of a number of different recovery places in Southern California. When I met Nick and Vince, all of a sudden I realized that I'm finally meeting 2 people that are running a business who have their hearts in it, not their money, not their heads, although that's a part of it, but they lead with their hearts. At that point, I quit the job I had before and said, is there any way I can go to work for you guys? And they said yes. So it's been a pleasure for me to work for them because I would like to think that my heart is in the same place as theirs. So I urge you to approve this. Thank you.
Well done. Under 3. And that concludes. Does anybody, well, if anybody else would like to speak, now or hold your peace. We're going to bring it back up here. Do you have any more questions of the applicant at this time, or did you want to chat about it?
I'm prepared to make a motion. However, I would like to ask staff 2 questions prior to making the motion, if I can.
Sure.
Okay. I understand that a condition has been placed on this project in which they cannot exceed the number of permitted parking stalls that's assigned to that building. That's correct? And
That is correct.
okay. And the second is, would you just touch upon so that the public can understand what are the permitted uses and how they qualify as a permitted use?
Well, this particular zoning district, it's the Industrial Park Zoning District. It allows for various uses. Medical office is one of the permitted uses, provided that they can meet the parking requirement for the medical office, which is 1 parking space for every 150 square feet. However, in the case of this application, they're basically arguing that they don't operate like a typical medical office, where they have clients that come and go by appointments, seeing doctors, dentists. So they have provided this parking study that shows that they should only have 11 cars there based on the operational characteristics.
And in summary, with this approval, they will not be permitted to exceed the allowable number of parking spaces.
They're not exceeding the allowable for their tenant suite based on the square footage. It's they're considered a medical office, and medical office requires 1 parking space for every 150 square feet. In the case of the square footage for this building, they couldn't meet that parking requirement, but based on their unique operational characteristics, they submitted a parking study with the site development permit. So that's what this application is for. The use is permitted, it's the parking associated with it.
So it's now at 24, and if they exceed that, then they're in then they're wrong. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. All right. So does anybody else have any questions of staff before Commissioner De Almeida?
I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing and that we adopt the recommendation of staff to approve this project.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Let's vote. Motion carries 4-0. Congratulations and thank you very much. All right, we're going to move right along and open up the public hearing for the next item.
Yes, item 5, a site development permit to construct a 5-story, 102-room hotel and a planned program. Marie Luna has a staff report this evening.
Good evening, Chair Fuentes and members of the Commission. Tonight I will be presenting the application proposal for a site development permit and planned sign program for a hotel described as Spring Hill Suites Marriott and located at 23600 Rockfield Boulevard in the Lake Forest Gateway Retail Center. Lake Forest Retail Center is located within the Lake Forest planned community at the northwest corner of Rockfield Boulevard and Lake Forest Drive, directly adjacent to the I-5 freeway on-ramp. The center is located within an area commonly referred to as the Golden Triangle. It's an area comprised of over 5,000 acres where the 5, 405, and 133 freeways meet. The Golden Triangle includes over 5.7 million square feet of commercial industrial uses and is considered South Orange County's major employment hub. It attracts employers and employees from the cities of Irvine, Laguna Hills, and Lake Forest. In 2016 alone, over 800 new jobs were added in the city of Lake Forest, resulting in a significant increase in the city's daytime population. Lake Forest Gateway Center, because of its location and proximity to this major employment hub, has modified its uses and design over time in response to market demands and trends. The center includes a mix of service, retail, and restaurant uses, which serve residents and area-wide employees. The proposed hotel is intended to augment and complement the center's existing uses, as well as provide the city with freeway-close lodging in proximity to tourist and business destinations. Project applicants Don Cape of Carlson Hospitality Development and Patrick Cox of Valley Rock Realty Group are proposing to develop a 102-room hotel over a subterranean parking garage with 85 parking stalls at the Lake Forest Gateway Retail Center. The hotel, branded as a Spring Hill Suites Marriott, is proposed in place of an approved 13,000 square foot retail building, which has not been constructed. The applicants are also requesting approval of a planned sign program for the hotel in compliance with the city's zoning ordinance. The sign program would amend existing on-site signage by allowing 5 new hotel signs, including 1 monument sign and 4 building wall-mounted signs. The site is zoned and designated commercial. Hotels are permitted in the community commercial zone, subject to Planning Commission approval of a site development permit. The hotel is described as a limited service hotel as opposed to a full service hotel. The hotel would offer limited amenities for hotel guests. It includes 102 guest rooms, including 43 double queen rooms and 59 king studios, and a 1,700 square foot communal lounge. The hotel does not include a conference center, banquet rooms, a swimming pool, or restaurants. It is anticipated that hotel guests would take advantage of the restaurants on site. The hotel is designed in a modern architectural style with pop-outs and color banding for added architectural interest. The hotel is proposed to be 5 stories and a maximum of 65 feet high as permitted by code. The planned sign program includes 5 signs, including a 5-foot high by 6-foot wide monument sign, double-faced with a 20 square foot sign panel, and 4 building wall mounted signs, 3 of which would be visible from the freeway. Building wall-mounted signs are approximately 76 square feet along the east and west elevations and nearly 120 square feet along the north and south elevations. The signage proposed meets code requirements. Over the years, Lake Forest Gateway Retail Center has been extensively remodeled and improved to respond to changing market forces. Its most recent remodel, approved by the Planning Commission in 2014, resulted in the demolition of 4 buildings, shown in pink, the approval of 5 new retail buildings, shown in green, facade remodels of existing buildings, shown in yellow, a reorientation of the triangular surface parking lot in the center of the lot, and access improvements off of Rockfield Boulevard, including a southbound right turn only and 2 northbound left turn only turns into the center. One of these left turns included the installation of a signal right at Center Street, which in turn required curbing, signage, striping, paving, and the addition of a left turn pocket into the center from Rockfield Boulevard. The 2014 approval resulted in the approval of 8 retail buildings and required 459 parking spaces in accordance with zoning ordinance shopping center parking requirements. The 2014 approval also resulted in 3 improved access ways off of Rockfield Boulevard and included on-site improvements to the surface parking lot, both the triangular section, as I described, and the additional parking behind buildings 1, 2, and 3, as well as the addition of communal outdoor space. The 2014 approval has resulted in 7 of the 8 buildings being constructed and 463 surface parking spaces provided. The 8th building, building number 4, shown in green, is the 13,000 square foot retail building which has not been constructed. And it is in this location that the applicant is proposing to build a 102-room hotel with a subterranean parking structure for 85 parking stalls. The hotel is proposed in place of approved Building 4. It would be located along the center's southwest boundary, adjacent to the I-5 freeway on-ramp. The hotel would be accessed through the center parking via one of the 3 existing access points off of Rockfield Boulevard. Guests parking in the subterranean parking would access the parking via the de facto alley between the existing Building 3 and the proposed hotel. Guests would also be able to walk directly from the hotel onto Lake Forest Drive via an existing pedestrian access between the proposed hotel and existing Building 6. As indicated, the hotel is proposed in place of an approved 13,000 square foot building. But because the hotel would provide additional parking as part of its development, specifically 85 subterranean parking spaces where none currently exist, the hotel development will not only meet its parking requirements, but exceed them by 52 parking spaces. As indicated, the approved retail center, including the approved 13,000 square foot retail building, requires 459 parking spaces. Currently, the site has 463, 4 more than required. In contrast, the existing retail center, without the approved 13,000 square foot building, but with the hotel, requires 496 parking spaces, but would provide 548 parking spaces, 52 more than required. Staff has analyzed the proposed development and determined that it not only generates less traffic than if the approved 13,000 square foot retail building were built, but it provides more parking, 548 parking spaces versus 463 parking spaces. Moreover, because the peak demand for the retail center is during the lunch hour, similar to other retail centers that serve the Spectrum area, the Golden Triangle area, and businesses in the vicinity, the hotel peak demand hour is in the evening. The hotel use provides more available parking for retail customer use during the peak hours of the retail center. The applicant has prepared a parking study as well as other technical studies, but the parking study conducted hourly counts. The parking study determined that hotel guests leave in the morning and new guests arrive in the late afternoon during hours that do not coincide with the restaurant and retail uses at the center. As a result, the hotel has very little activity during the daytime. This leaves open surface parking and subterranean parking available for retail center use. The hotel is a complementary use to the existing retail and will provide more parking and less impacts upon the successful retail center and the surrounding area. For this reason, staff recommends approval of the site development permit and planned sign program for the proposed hotel. Staff is here to answer any questions to present the project.
Thank you, Marie. That's your first, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right, so questions of staff?
Maybe we might be asking the applicant this or whatever, but stated that there's 2 right turn only. Is that the 2 driveways prior to the signal? That's right turn only out of there?
The 2, excuse me, there's 1 right turn only, and that would be, as you're coming southbound on Rockfield, it's the right turn, the very last driveway, as you're coming southbound on Rockfield.
The one
You
that's
can't-
closest to Lake Forest?
Correct. You can't turn left into that driveway.
Okay.
So if you were to turn left into the center, let me find my slide and I will show those access points. If you can.
So what maybe Doug, you could answer.
Maybe I can shine a little light.
Maybe I'm guessing coming out of the 2 one, is that turn only?
No, you can make, there's 2 access points, the one in the center that's signalized.
This one here.
And the one to the north that have full left, right, full access. The one to the south, the southerlymost access, has right in, right out only.
Okay. And then at center, the signalized one, is it, because I thought I sort of said left turn only. Can you make a U-turn there?
That's a full access, yes, you can.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then the other question I had, too, you were talking about the parking structure being I forget, it's dual use or whatever. Can somebody go into the restaurant park in that parking structure
Yes,
for the hotel?
Yes, that is one of the conditions of approval, and the applicant has made that available, that the parking structure would be available to center retail uses, whether it be customers or employees.
Okay. So how would then, let's say it's pretty full, how would then the hotel guests have a place to park? Maybe you don't know this, maybe I could ask the applicant, as far as will there be a section for hotel guests only and another section for multi-use, or do you know?
I will let the applicant
Okay.
elaborate
I'll
on
ask.
that, but I could answer a portion of your question. The parking study shows that during the peak demand hour for the hotel, even when they project it to be at 67% full, there would remain 24 parking spaces minimum that would be available for use by center retail customers.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody else have questions of staff? Tom?
You talk about at peak periods, there'd be 24 spaces left that could be occupied on the premises. Where would those be for problems, probably, because that parking lot has got a very strange configuration and access to it's difficult at best. Where would you propose those 24 extra spaces might
Well,
be?
the
Parking
20
study could account for any of that?
The 24 spaces that I mentioned pertain to the subterranean parking structure. The existing surface spaces, there's 69 allocated for the hotel use. Those would remain, those would be open for center retail use. The remaining spaces within the subterranean parking would be used by hotel guests. But even with that, there would be approximately a minimum of 24 spaces available within the subterranean parking structure.
When you established the parking study, did you do anything to account for the number of seats in some of the restaurants in that particular area? Because that retail center is very heavy on restaurant retail.
Well, no, the parking study followed what our zoning ordinance requires, which is one parking space per 200 square feet of shopping center use. And our zoning ordinance doesn't distinguish between number of seats, but rather square footage of shopping center use. And that is the way many of our shopping centers are parked, all of our shopping centers, and the way shopping centers are parked in neighboring jurisdictions as well.
You know, so if you had a situation where, say, Buffalo Wild Wings and Pepino's has a really busy football night or something, and they occupy all the seats in their restaurant, is it conceivable that they would take more parking spaces than the parking study allows?
I don't believe so, because even so, you have 52 extra parking spaces that are currently not available. If that 13,000 square foot building were built, there would only be 4 excess parking spaces. So with the hotel, because they're providing 85 subterranean parking spaces, you would have an additional 52 spaces that could be spread amongst all of the uses at the center.
How well would that parking be identified? Because it looks like it's an alleyway that's not, if you were circulating to the center, you might or might not see it. Are they going to have signage to direct people to use that parking?
I will defer to the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
It would be in their best interest to have that kind of signage, and I have seen signage at the site.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
So if I want to go to Pepino's and I want to use the parking lot for the hotel, the underground parking, there's not going to be a ticket taker there that says, oh, no, you have to be a resident of this hotel to use this parking lot. Is that?
That's correct.
So anybody going to any restaurant can find the hotel, because there probably will be adequate signage, and go down there and park. And if it's
available, it's
available.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner De Almeida, do you have any questions of staff? We'll hold then. We will reserve your right to come back. How's that? Okay, so we're going to move on to speakers. I bet we're going to hear from the applicant. Patrick Cox. And may I just disclose before you speak, I did meet with Mr. Cox, and I think I need to do that legally, but it's nice to see you again.
Patrick Cox, City of Newport Beach. Thank you, Commissioner Fuentes and fellow commissioners. I would like to thank Marie. That's a terrific recap of the report. A lot of technical information. I want to thank you for that. Doug Anderson as well. Gail and Nikki as well, as far as working with us. You guys have done a tremendous job working with this particular land use conversion. I'm here to answer any questions. We're not asking for any variances with respect to this application. We've met code and we've exceeded code with respect to parking. Our hotel partners here, Mr. Don Cape, and he can answer any specific questions with respect to the operations of the hotel.
So Commissioner Ludden had a couple questions of staff that we stumped the staff. And so you're going to hopefully answer the questions for us now.
Specifically, when you build the hotel, how will you rearrange the signage and the direction of traffic in that particular area to make sure you maximize the use of the parking?
Here, let me put the site plan up.
We do not have a construction exhibit, but as a condition of this approval, there is a construction management plan that's as a condition. And the intent is to take all the construction traffic to the rear of the property, so it's never coming through the center of the property. And all the loading and unloading of the project and the materials will be done in the morning. And fortunately, our hotel partner also is the owner of the Travelodge site. So the intent right now is to have the labor park there and then come to the site and work during the day.
Okay, well, that's very good. I appreciate that. When that hotel is constructed, what will you do to manage the traffic flow through that whole area of the parking lot? Because I know there's been issues in the past. I know you have issues right now with Starbucks with traffic flow because of the number of people that back up at the drive-through. How do you plan to manage the situations like that?
Well, right now we are taking a very proactive approach. Where with the success of the center, you have to be fluid with your approach, and we've worked hand in hand with the city, with our design team, with design approaches to mitigate queuing, stacking, traffic flow at the peak time during the lunch for this particular project. So we've just recently instituted a traffic guard at one of the pinch points for the project, and so forth. So we have a detailed ongoing parking management plan for the project. That's you really have to have a ability to be proactive and make changes as deemed appropriate.
Well, it's a credit to your planning and your effort that you have this kind of a problem.
Yeah, Thursday I met with Starbucks.
Yeah.
Thursday I met with Starbucks, and I had to ask them how's the store performing, and they indicated that they are the #1 store in the entire area of South Orange County. So that couldn't predict that.
No. Well, congratulations on that. As long as we keep the parking under control.
Thank you.
So do we have any more questions? I think you do.
Yeah, may I make a disclosure? I didn't act fast enough.
Go.
As I start my third year in the Planning Commission, I have resolved to be a more proactive Planning Commissioner. In this regard, I have visited the project site at peak times on 3 occasions to count parking spaces. I've interviewed 2 tenants concerning the parking situation. I have met with the owner of Gateway Center to discuss customer parking, employee parking, and construction logistics. I have met with the manager of an existing hotel to discuss the impacts of increasing supply and demand of hotel rooms in the city. And I have investigated alternative design solutions to encourage and protect pedestrians that would cross Lake Forest Drive in the future.
Do you have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that, too. We can come back. All right, so if nobody else has any questions for you, Mr. Cox, we're going to ask you to sit down with being on the ready to come back.
Thank you.
Peggy.
Don Cape.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, staff. I just wanted to echo what Mr. Cox said. Don Cape, Las Vegas, Nevada, with Carlson Hospitality. We're Marriott's largest franchisee in the nation, and we've built and owned and operated hotels now for close to 35 years across the U.S. And we actually manage our own hotels, and we own these as legacy properties, so they're family-held assets that we hire locally, we hire managers, and we're actively involved in being stewards of the community. So it's unlike some that you see that are merchant-type products that get built and then sold and are managed by third parties. So we will always be here as you know, as patrons of the city. But I also wanted to relate on what Patrick Cox had mentioned with staff. If you watched Marie's presentation, and I do these, once a month up and down the coast with sophisticated cities such as Lake Forest, and it's second to none what staff has done to guide us through the process. As you know, it's very complicated. These things aren't easy anymore to get to the point where you understand code and you have 20 consultants that are in your back in your back room working to make sure that you comply, and you spend a lot of money to get to this point. So you want to make sure that you've been able to comply. As Patrick said, we do comply with code. We're not seeking any variances, and we think it's going to be a great amenity to the center. Talking about traffic and circulation and movement of the patrons of the hotel, it's 102 rooms. It's a very small number of rooms relative to the hotel. It'd be like watching paint dry to see these patrons come and go as they come and check in and leave for the hotels. The other thing that's interesting to note on the parking side, and it's hard to get a handle on because the data is so new, is for most people even coming from John Wayne that are going to come here for business, rather than rent a car and drive here, they're going to take public transit or Uber or Lyft or ride sharing programs to get here and likely not have to go anywhere. So you're going to have people supporting the center that don't necessarily have cars. So if you look at 102 rooms and we run 80% occupancy, which we'd be happy to do, which is a great number, on an annualized basis, and probably 20 to 25% of those people are coming in one car. There's two people sharing a car or ride sharing. So you really probably aren't even going to notice the impact of the hotel customer with this use as it relates to the everyday ongoing operations of the project. And we think it's a great project. The City of Lake Forest has done a tremendous job of adding jobs and creating commerce, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions?
Just, I know you said there's no restaurant. Do you do like a continental breakfast? Is that included?
They do a light breakfast, a little buffet, not very good, by the way. So we don't want you to come over and eat and get disappointed. So
okay. Do a lot of motorcycle trips around the country, and I like the places that have a little breakfast, so I don't have to go somewhere else. So that's.
And the Spring Hill Suites brand is kind of the upper end, one of the upper end. It's not an extended stay type, so it's more of a business traveler. So.
Right. And to your earlier statement, you're too far away from John Wayne to do a shuttle service, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to Peggy again. Bob Holtzclaw. Hello, Bob.
Hi, how you doing? Bob Holtzclaw, a longtime resident. I'm here to talk about Gateway, the complex. Evidently, retail does work. We didn't have to make homes all through Foothill and Portola. We could have used that for retail. Obviously, it works. It looks like some people, I guess they didn't know what they were talking about. Those retail properties do work. And I hope we don't have any more retail areas turn into homes in Foothill and Portola because people are right now complaining about the traffic. Gateway. Some of it is a complete disaster. You drive, there's a drive-through in there, and it bottlenecks to the exit. And people are going like, you're not going to get in front of me. I've been waiting at this light 2 times already, and you're going to come out of that drive-through from that store. Then you got the U-turn. I was with Tom and Gail from the city, and we looked all through the area, and they said about the U-turn. Well, I went there a couple days later with my daughter to drop off her Subaru across the street, and there was 2 people trying to make a U-turn at the same time, and one almost ran into the other. It's a disaster waiting to happen. I was told that they're going to make a cement barrier through there, but I would like to see a cutout, maybe for a U-turn right there, but only for one car to make that to that other driveway without the light. Right now, without the hotel, you've got a line of cars going all the way to Lake Forest to try to make the left-hand turn on Rockfield going into that complex there. I've tried to get into Pepino's. I've tried to get into the little pizza place over there, driving around a few times and just left. There's no parking. Now, I was told by Gail that 85 underground parking would be for the hotel. Now all of a sudden it's open to everybody. I just wonder where the help for the hotel is going to park, not only just for the residents that are going to go over there. I suggest cutting the hotel down to 85 underground parking. Number 2, build an 85 underground parking with another 80 second level parking on the side, or don't build a hotel. I mean, it's so full in there. How are you going to get more people in there? And as far as people going in there, most of these people are business people. They're going to rent cars. It's not going to be get a bus or something from John Wayne or something. I've been in business. First place I go to is get the rental car. So thank you.
Joseph Moscatello.
Good evening, everyone. Joe Moscatello, resident of Lake Forest for over 35 years. I am Pepino. So I am in the center since, hello, I've been in the center for over 33 years. And I've watched the center go downhill, and now I've just watched the center become fantastic. I know people will complain about success, but you know, success is success. And what's happening in that center right now is success. Everybody's doing well, that's why there's cars. And the proposed plan that they're doing right there is going to make that center 10 times better. And honestly, they have 13,000 square feet that they can build and will build. And I don't want that. I'd rather have a hotel because it's going to better our city, it's going to better the shopping center, and it's going to help the parking. It's the opposite of what they would build and could build opposed to building the hotel. That's all I got to say. Any questions for me?
What time's happy hour?
All day.
Scott Brown.
Good evening, Scott Brown, Design Style Architects, Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm the project architect, and I want to say my team's worked closely with Marie and over the past few months, and it's been a pleasure working with her. And I think we've vetted all the items and issues and come up with a great project. Obviously, I support the project, and I'm here to answer any architectural questions that you may have.
We'll line up for all these questions. Just bear with us. We're going to organize. All right, guys?
Great. Thank you.
No questions. Thank you for coming all the way from Las Vegas. Heiko Peschel.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Heiko Peschel, Foothill Ranch, 4 Pearl Avenue. Longtime resident of this part of the county. We moved here in 1960 to O'Neill Park, and the furthest I ever got away was Huntington Beach. So I've been in the neighborhood for a while. In reference to, pardon me. In reference to our city, such as it is, commercial development. You've taken commercial development away from Foothill Ranch. You're adding it down here. Other than the fact that you're overcrowding us with townhouses and condos and apartments in Foothill Ranch, the idea of having a hotel there by the freeway that will minimally, in all effects, impact our city. They're looking at increasing the parking places, decreasing the usage from what was planned and what is permitted to what can be. I've been a long-time customer of Pepino's. Matter of fact, we're going to have about a dozen there tomorrow night for dinner. 3 weeks out of 4, we'll be there visiting with Joe and Denise and giving them a hard time. So I am somewhat prejudiced. The entry and exit and the parking, if you're coming down Rockfield from the Irvine Auto Center, nice planning on Irvine's part, put the auto center next to Lake Forest where it doesn't bother them. You can turn right into the area behind the restaurants, behind Restaurant Row, and yes, it is well known. That area behind the restaurants is almost always full up. And you can get out of there and make a left turn out of there. My mistake, and I'm sorry, Madam Chairperson. But then you have the main entrance, and this is where I think the developer fell down. He's got 2 exit lines, but he's only got 1 entrance line. There's only one way in off of Lake Forest, off of Rockfield, either direction, and that's why the traffic stacks up. The other thing is the way the right turn exit is at Starbucks. There are people who will cut and make a U-turn before the light, and then turn around and go into Starbucks that way from the right-hand side. Either fix it or not allow it. Thank you. And yes, I am in favor, obviously.
Thank you very much.
Larissa Clark.
Hello, Larissa Clark, longtime Lake Forest resident. I live on Rockfield and Ridge Route, and my concern is for the traffic flow in and out of that center. There's only 1 signalized in and out of that center. It does back up, as everyone is saying. My concern is that what is that going to do to the easy access onto the 5 freeway? Because that is a major travel on-off. And if it does back up and become a little too hairy because people are in and out of that center and it blocks those 2 right-hand turn lanes, will they then choose to drive down the street that I live right on and back up to, which is Rockfield, to then get on at El Toro Road, which is already a bit of a mess there with that shopping center? So my concern or question is, what about flow on and off the freeway right there? That hotel is there. And then how are we going to fix in and out of that center? Because 1 signalized in just isn't cutting it. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there more?
Randy Yamamoto.
Good evening, Randy Yamamoto here, Mission Viejo resident. It's been about 10 years since I've been in front of the commission, so it's kind of fresh and nice to be back here. And I add a little levity to the hearing here, but when Patrick Cox told me that Spring Hill Suites was planning on moving in, I did some flips. It was outstanding. I'm with Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm co-owner. Been there for going on 8 years now. We, along with the remodel for the center, which you all approved, appreciate it, we remodeled as well. And so I've got a huge investment in making sure that going forward, we're going to have a nice revenue stream for not only for the city, but for us as well. Adding the hotel there is fantastic. I know there's a lot of concerns with parking, and from what I'm hearing is it looks like it's adding parking, and if it was the retail center as originally designed or planned, that would actually subtract or not add as many parking places. So I think that's kind of something that we need to really consider, that we're actually adding some parking. We also need to look at, from traffic patterns. That's something outside of our control. I'm with Joe. Joe's from Pepino's talking about, it's success. We've got a lot of people that are coming to visit the retailers. We've been, in existence as Buffalo Wild Wings for about 8 years here. And we could have done a whole lot better with the original plan when we signed our lease, which never transpired. Now that we have this planning, this hotel that's going to happen, I think this is where we all benefit. And I'd just like to thank you all for considering that. And please approve, because I've got free wings to all of you if you guys approve that. See 4 green lights up there. Anyway, thank you very much.
We're going to defer to our city attorney on that and probably say no thank you. Do we have one more?
Jim Reichert?
Jim Reichert.
Good evening, everyone. Jim Reichert, longtime Lake Forest resident. I'm really happy Gateway Center is really busy. I go there a lot because my favorite restaurant's there. But I just don't believe the numbers on the parking. Sorry, it just makes no sense. It just doesn't make sense. But whatever. If there's not enough parking, that's the developer's problem and the business's problem. My concern is the traffic on Rockfield. I almost had an accident along with 2 other vehicles Wednesday of last week at Lake Forest and Trabuco because we were going across Lake Forest at Rockfield trying to get on the freeway, and the cars were backed up from the traffic light at Center trying to get into Gateway all the way to Lake Forest Drive on Rockfield, and the people making left on Lake Forest onto Rockfield couldn't do it. It was backed up. That's a mess. It's probably going to get worse. Whether they build a hotel or don't build a hotel, that needs to be fixed. And frankly, I don't see how it can be. There's one entrance lane into the Gateway Center, and if you make that 2 entrance lanes, then you delete 1 exit lane. Doesn't seem to be enough room to expand it. If you make 2 entrance lanes on Rockfield into Gateway at the light, there's a stop sign right by Pepino's, and the traffic's going to back up all the way to light. I don't know how you're going to fix it, but it really needs to be fixed. It's a mess. It's dangerous, and I told you 2 years ago when you approved Gateway that traffic light was going to cause a lot of problems and it was going to be a mess, and I was right. And I don't know how you're going to fix this, but I hope you can. Maybe somebody's greater minds than mine can figure out a way, but if you can't fix this, it's going to cause a lot of safety issues on Rockfield and Lake Forest and Rockfield too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And that would be our last. All right, so we're going to bring it up here. And would anybody like to bring up one of the applicants? I have a couple questions for Mr. Cox. Hi again.
Good evening.
So if you don't build the hotel, will you still build that underground parking?
No.
Okay. How many employees do you project to have for the hotel?
I can answer that.
I know you can.
Yes, there's
You can
10
turn around and get a prompt with fingers if you'd like.
There's 10 employees on a 24-hour shift. Very limited.
Okay. So I know that you've been out there a lot with regards to the traffic and the line of traffic, if you will, on the streets. What time of day do you find that to be most impacting?
Yeah, we have nearly 6 months of recorded data, and the traffic occurs from 12 to about 1:20 daily, Monday through Friday. And it's essentially about an hour and a half span.
In a 24-hour period, you're
Right,
finding that
correct.
maybe up to 2 hours that peak time is where it's-
We're showing about an hour and a half right now, so it's not 2 hours.
I was up to 2 hours. Okay, well, I'll stand corrected.
Right.
Hour and a half. All right. So, all right. That would conclude my questions. Anybody else have questions while he's here?
If I remember the traffic study correctly, there were 2 peak periods of the day. One of them occurs around 12 to 1. The other one, I think, occurs in the dinner hour between 6 to 8. Is that correct?
I believe that's on a Friday, correct?
Friday or Saturday, potentially?
I think it's a Friday specifically.
Okay. Because you have got more restaurant activity on Friday?
That would be the assumption.
So do you perceive any kind of an issue since the hotel's peak period would occur probably around that 6 to 8 time period also?
Again, we have afforded us 52 extra parking stalls to support these uses.
Okay.
So
You're comfortable that that extra 52 is enough to handle the Friday night, say, load that you would get from the, like Pepino's and Buffalo Wild Wings, and they have a really good night?
yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Would you do it if you didn't?
No.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, I think we're going to have some more.
Yeah, one of my concerns when I was on the traffic advisory group was this left turn and the entrance into the Gateway Center. So have spoken with Doug and Dave at some point. Maybe you guys, if you would, I know you guys are working on it and have some ideas. Maybe you could some ideas that you have, and maybe some solutions to this issue.
Sure. We've been looking at this for about the past 6 months to 8 months since we've noticed a problem. The problems we've seen out there are specifically during the noontime peak hour, as Mr. Cox explained. 11:30 to 1:30 was a 2-hour period we've observed to be the brunt of the problems. A couple things, we put our heads together. We've worked with the developer and some of his engineers, and some of the things we've come up with is, you saw the delineators we put out there to try to help the situation of turning left into the right turn only pocket out there. A couple things we were looking at was a solid median through there. I think somebody brought that up, that we were looking at a solid concrete median at some point in doing that, but due to funding, we're kind of looking at some interim solutions, but with that as an ultimate solution. One thing we looked at was actually lengthening that queue in that left turn area for people turning left into the shopping center at the signal. We think we can get another 5 to 6 vehicles stacking in there, which would substantially help out during the peak hour. Right now, that's about the number of cars that are backing out into the number 1 through lane in the northbound direction. So we think that's going to help. Second thing we're doing is we're looking at the traffic signal timing out there, and believe me, we have run multiple programs out there. One thing we are going to be implementing is a conditional service, and what that will do is we'll be able to bring that left turn up again for a second time during the same cycle. It may be a limited time because we have to steal green time from another movement, but we think that's going to work by bringing that up, particularly during that peak hour that we're talking about. Somebody brought up that we have 2 peak hours out there. That's true, but the PM peak hour is substantially less than the noontime peak hour that we're looking at, that 2-hour period that we're doing out there. That's some of the things we're looking at doing out there. I think probably the biggest one's going to be the traffic signal timing. And like I said, we've got various timing programs we've already prepared to look at that and are prepared to implement those. Another thing we've noticed is some of the on-site stuff that the developer has implemented. We have worked with them early on to implement some things, and a few things have changed that we haven't particularly seen when we went out there a couple of weeks ago and noticed that. And we would like the opportunity to still work with the developer to work through those items, give him some suggestions on signing, some marking, maybe changing some directions on things out there, some of the things we've seen. And we think that would benefit the circulation on site, which again would cascade over onto the public right-of-way. One comment was made, a question about what about the exiting and onto the freeway. Right now there is not an exiting problem at that location. You can freely exit out there. I mean, I've seen a minimum wait at the signal of maybe 4 cars, 5 cars backed up, but for the most part it's pretty free to get in and out. I personally use the northerly intersection for access going in, out of there. I've observed it numerous times on the weekends. That's my preferred route. I don't have a wait. There's not a problem. I think a lot of times on-site signing may help that. Dave and I have both had experience with other developments where if we sign another exit or sign another entrance, people see it, oh, you mean I can turn there, I can go there. Something of that nature we're looking at also. So.
Is that left turn, painted left turn pocket on the, from Rockfield onto Center, is that as long as it can be? I know right after that it's a 2-way left turn pocket. Is there any chance of maybe making that left turn pocket a little longer and then it wouldn't back?
That's one of the things we're looking at. That's
okay.
Correct. Yes.
But I did want to point out that it'll still be a flexible left turn lane.
Sure.
We're not dedicating it only to that left turn because there still is a need from businesses across the way to provide access to them. But the goal is to restripe that area, relocate those delineators in such a way that will extend that queue by, as Doug pointed out, approximately 120 feet or so, or about 5 to 6 car lengths.
Do you have provision in the traffic signal to sense when the queue is totally filled up so you can adjust the timing to kind of eliminate it? So how far back do you have the the car sensors on that bucket?
Yeah, you're talking about adaptive control.
Yes, exactly.
The controller we have out there will perform adaptive controls. Unfortunately, we don't have the other facilities on site at this time to be able to do that. Some of the facilities are still experimental. There's some companies that have made advances in doing that. The one thing we can do, like I said, is the conditional service, bring that back up in the peak hours that we observe where there are problems out there. And by bringing that signal, that left turn signal, for instance, up twice during the same cycle, we can clear that queue twice during that cycle.
So do you have any plans to do anything adaptive in the future for that location?
In the future, we would love to do that. That's the goal. That's where we're headed.
What does it take to do that? What would it take to do that?
Probably an advanced controllers. We're moving in the area of wavetronics, which is a radar detection. We've installed these at 2 locations so far. They're quite expensive. Luckily, the development community has funded both of those on behalf of the city, and we have experience in other cities using those, and it's working out fantastic. That's something we need to do here. Like I said, it is expensive. It's about $30,000 an intersection to implement that. The new controllers are about $10,000 a piece, and then you need all of the logic and software that needs to go into that, as well as have communication so that everything can communicate with one another.
So this is a $100,000 project.
Well, that's just a one location, probably. It will take time, but that is something that I think in the CIP program we've looked at long range, and something that would be proposed later on to the council as they move forward through the CIP process.
Yeah, I would want to point out that it's not that we have it everywhere else and not here. We do not have adaptive at any of our signal individual locations or signal systems at this time. Commissioner Armando is actually part of the Citizens Traffic Advisory Group, and one of the recommendations is at an appropriate time to move the city, as all the other cities and agencies are doing, towards an adaptive signal control system. But as Doug pointed out, it is a fairly costly endeavor, something that would probably have to be funded over extended periods of time. But it is a goal that the city has as part of the adopted recommendations from our Citizens Traffic Advisory Group.
So this would be on this would be on your high priority list of sites to implement that? This one, your Gateway Center?
Possibly. It could be. Yeah, we haven't even looked at prioritizing locations yet.
So you don't have a criteria where you might use it yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question of the owner of the center and the proponent of the hotel project. And basically is that...
Mr. Olson, are you still here? He's not here, but go ahead. Maybe somebody else can answer.
In the interim, when they start construction on that project and they excavate for the 85 parking spaces underneath, it pretty much takes up the site. And then you have the logistics of cranes and trucks and storing materials and such. So it's going to have I'm suspecting they'll have an impact on existing available parking spaces. I was wondering if you had given any consideration to an interim employee management parking plan. I know that one of the tenants had talked about the idea that some of the parking stalls at the bowling alley may be available on an interim basis to relieve the additional impact that's going to occur to a bad situation now during the construction of the hotel. Can you comment on that, please?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Almeida. We have a 7-bullet point parking management plan. We also have adopted a construction management plan. In the bullet plan that we have for the overall property, we've entered into a lease agreement with Charlie, the owner of the Lake Forest Lanes, and he's afforded us the right to park 45 stalls on his property from 6 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. daily.
Commissioner Almeida, if I could add that there's a condition in the resolution, Condition 8, that does require the applicant to submit a parking management plan for his construction management for review and approval by the Directors of Public Works and Development Services.
Thank you. I think it will help all the tenants because there's a lot of employees there, particularly in the middle of the day. If somehow some of their cars would park somewhere else, I think it would provide relief and make it easier to find parking spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're back here. You have a finger on your button. What would you like?
Well, I'd like to make a motion.
Are we ready for that? Does anybody else have any comments? We didn't really chat up here.
I can wait.
You can make a motion for discussion. That's fine. You can make a motion, we can discuss it, that's fine.
Well, typically, if there's a motion made, we'll just go right into the vote. So this is the time to discuss. So if you have anything to discuss, then let's do that before the motion, if you don't mind.
Okay. There's challenges within the site as far as parking spaces are concerned, and there's challenges around the perimeter of that site. The hotel itself wouldn't be a problem to the problems associated with the perimeter. I pretty much see that the introduction of the 85 subterranean parking spaces that are going to be made available to anybody at the center is a winning solution for that site. And I think the quote here, at least it's on page 5 of the parking analysis, is that the hotel parking spaces below the hotel would be available to visitors and employees of the Gateway Center from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I think this decision to allow that parking to be shared is it indicates to me that I would vote in favor of this project.
Mark, do you have anything?
No, like I said, I wasn't concerned with the parking, but I think with the subterranean, the shared parking, I tend to agree. I think that that will alleviate some of the problems. And the main concern that I have, and hopefully you guys can come up with a solution, is the access to the center. But that doesn't really affect the hotel. I think in general, that's something we need to really address, and hopefully we can solve.
I think I concur with my fellow commissioners. I think the hotel is a much better use on that property than another building. I think the 85 extra parking spaces are absolutely necessary. I still think that they'll still have to have an aggressive parking management plan in order to manage the flow of parking through that area, throughout the whole center. And I do have real concerns about the traffic signal and what's going on out there, and I would really strongly encourage the traffic people to get serious with the developer and expedite the improvement of that signal, because I think that is a huge, giant problem. And frankly, if I had my way, I would probably make that a condition of approval, that be remedied, because it is a big problem. Whether we have the money or not, it's an accident waiting to happen. And I'm just really concerned as we increase the traffic that signal is going to become a bigger problem. And the fact that we have no provision or priority for that concerns me, because I think it does need to be a priority. So I mean, I think the hotel is a great use. I think the design is good. I think that style of hotel will fit there nicely. If they were going to do conventions and conferences, I'd have a bigger problem with it, but they don't. So I think, it's an appropriate use for that site, and I can vote for it as long as we're working on fixing the traffic problem.
Well, I would concur with everybody. I went there 2 days ago. I don't like to go there for lunch. I kind of usually refuse to go there for lunch. I'm that choice. I can say no. But a girlfriend wanted to go, so I went, and I took the first parking spot I could find, which was a long way from my restaurant. And then as I walked, there was like one there, when there's lots of parking, and that was at 12:50. And I waited at the signal for a very short time to get in. So I either avoid or I did choose to go at peak, and I went at peak and I didn't have a problem. So I love the fact that the underground parking would go in and give us so many more spaces there, and I do have trust and faith in our traffic department that they're going to make this a priority. And I love all your ideas about adding the additional left turn lane car designation. So yeah, I'm going to turn to Commissioner De Almeida because he said something about a motion.
I would like to make a motion in which we close the public hearing and we go ahead and we adopt the site development plan and I think the plan sign program. And I understand we need to make a small comment regarding CEQA and the exemption. Has that been resolved? It's an infill exemption?
Yes, Commissioner, that has been deemed an infill exemption.
All right. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Congratulations. All right. Moving along to the next item. And thank you, Marie, for your great first report. And thank you, Mr. Cox.
Item 6 is a discussion on residential parking. And has a report this evening on this item.
All right. Thank you, Gail. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. I'm pleased to be here. For those of you that don't know, my name is Carlo Tomaino. I'm with the City Manager's Office, so I don't often have the pleasure of being here, but glad to be here this evening. As you likely recall, a few months ago, the City Council had a discussion regarding parking in the Bennett Ranch area, and subsequently, as a result, assigned a task to the Planning Commission to review some of our parking policies, potentially updates to the code, and some other areas in which we could help the neighborhood. So I'll start with Bennett Ranch and then move on to parking policy, parking ordinance. So first off, we have the Bennett Ranch Viejo West neighborhood. We've been working with the residents for the past 6 months to identify areas that we could improve certain aspects of parking in the neighborhood, and we've done a number of things. The first was to extend parking along Cherry Street toward the golf course. So there was a limited parking area there that we extended to enable vehicles to park overnight. We also have allowed overnight parking on Orange Avenue in the industrial area. And the reason we made those changes is because there were vehicles that our residents were telling us, and we found were from the business area were parking in some of the residential areas, and that has helped to move some of those vehicles out of the residential area and into the light industrial area. In addition, our friends in Public Works, Doug Anderson and Dave Rogers, have performed a number of studies, including line of sight studies, to identify areas where perhaps red curb was needed to improve the line of sight. I know they've done a number of permit parking studies. They've done street sweeping studies. In addition, we've done some additional community outreach. We provided letters to the residents of the area talking about the use of garages and driveways, encouraging them, obviously, to use their property, and then identifying other potential areas for parking. We've attached those letters for your review as part of this report, and we mailed those letters out to approximately 1,300 homes in the area. In addition, we've met with representatives from Bennett Ranch and the Viejo West HOA Board. We had a very productive conversation a few weeks ago, specifically with the Viejo West Board about potentially adding some on-site parking spaces to their development. We identified a greenbelt area that could yield anywhere from 20 to 25 spaces, and I know that the board is considering that as an option, perhaps rolling that into an upcoming slurry project for their parking lot. So there's potential for that to occur. I know that we have some of the residents from Bennett Ranch and Viejo West in the audience who may wish to make some public comment and elaborate further on those details. In addition, relative to the issues that were raised regarding public safety, we've also encouraged those two homeowners associations to get together to form potentially a neighborhood watch program for the area. So what I'd like to do next as part of the presentation is just to go through some of the parking policy updates in the parking ordinance. So first up is the permit parking policy. That's one of the primary documents that the City Council uses to address concerns regarding overflow parking. The updates that we're making to the permit parking policy, or recommending for you actually, are clarification regarding the roles and responsibilities of the staff and how those requests are brought forward to the city. For example, we're recommending that those types of requests occur through an HOA or a majority of residents, because there are instances, for example, where we do have requests for permit parking from one or two residents, and in some cases that street may even meet the threshold, but when we go out and do a survey of the residents on the street, we find that a number of them actually don't want it to occur. And it takes a significant amount of staff time just to get to that point, only to have it fail because there wasn't enough consensus from the neighborhood for permit parking. In addition, we're making some clarifications to permit parking regarding single and multi-family homes. As you might recall, there was a non-binding opinion from the Attorney General's office regarding that issue, and so our City Attorney's office has helped us to clarify the permit parking policy so that it's essentially neutral to single or multi-family homes. It can be applied in either case, essentially. In addition, we're also recommending limiting the number of permit parking per household, so that a street does eventually get permit parking, and what we're recommending is limiting that number to 2 parking permits, with the potential of a third that could go through Public Works as an exemption if needed. The reason for that is because we found some instances, and we've received comments from some of our residents, that permit parking streets have unlimited access to a privatized area, and there should be a little bit more balance in that regard. So that's our attempt to create more balance in terms of the policy. There are some similar changes to street sweeping in terms of how those requests arrive to the staff and to the city, clarifications regarding roles and responsibilities relative to street sweeping, and in addition, we also have some updates that we're recommending to the Lake Forest Municipal Code regarding overnight parking. Specifically, we heard from residents that they had concerns about overnight parking of vehicles with trailers attached, so commercial vehicles that were being left in their neighborhoods unattended to for 1, 2, 3 nights that had trailers attached. So we've created a prohibition in the parking code for those types of vehicles in residential areas. Specifically with Bennett Ranch and Viejo West, those residential areas are near the light industrial area, so you have some overlap between those vehicles and the residences. But we also have that type of concern raised in other parts of the community, and so we felt that it would be appropriate to say, well, in order to preserve the residential character of our neighborhoods, vehicles that have trailers attached wouldn't be allowed to park overnight on the street. If somebody owns that type of vehicle, they would still be allowed to park that on their own property. If you're having someone come over to do work, let's say your landscaper, that would be fine. So those are exemptions in the policy, but what we're hearing from our residents is we don't wish to have those types of vehicles parked for longer periods of time in our neighborhood. So that's just another recommended change that we have for you. The biggest change that we have is the development of what we call the Residential Parking Management Manual. So you may recall that in the first instance where we made a presentation to the council, we attached a very extensive white paper, which was our initial research attempt on the issue. And what we found generally was that the city has for many years used primarily permit parking as the tool to address concerns regarding overflow parking, and that has its benefits, it has opportunities, and it has constraints. The opportunities obviously are that the residents that receive the permit parking and that want it are generally satisfied. The constraints are that when you apply permit parking in a serialized fashion, you end up moving some of those vehicles to other areas, and this was somewhat what occurred down in the Bennett Ranch VA area. So instead of using perhaps permit parking as one of the primary tools, what we've done is developed a sort of a matrix. You'll see part one of it here in the next slide, that essentially enables the staff to look at parking issues in a tiered sort of systematic structure. So there's 3 tiers to this process. And the first 2 tiers are essentially sort of staff-initiated items. You'll see that at the very top here of this matrix, what we've done, and we've done this using, quite frankly, Bennett Ranch and our resident partners here, different categories of concerns that are either directly related or tangentially related to overflow parking. And in each of these instances, what we've done is identified ways that the staff can initiate dialogue with, let's say, apartment owners or managers, utilize code enforcement, police services, or other means initially to try to address some of the outcomes of what occurs with overflow parking, and then essentially moving along to tier 1 to tier 2 is escalate those efforts as needed, so that what we're trying to do is apply the right kind of pressure at the right time and seeing if that has some kind of resolution to the issues identified by the residents. If not, moving on in the process, eventually escalating the types of solutions that staff might be able to effectuate. And then in the third tier, ultimately, is perhaps recommending some kind of parking restrictions to the City Council. So the idea would be that we utilize our staff resources in combination with police services, code enforcement, and others to identify the types of concerns, address the immediate concerns from our residents, escalate that process, and then arrive, if needed, at perhaps some parking restrictions, but only in the instance that we've exhausted other resources. So instead of going initially to some kind of parking restriction, we're going to try to look at this issue as comprehensively as possible, moving it along, and then, if needed, recommend some parking restrictions, because we're finding that in the instance of this issue, there's a variety of things that residents are concerned about. They're concerned about littering, they're concerned about loitering, they might be concerned about trash, crime, other kinds of concerns, overflow vehicles of a commercial nature parked in their neighborhood, and that there are a variety of things that staff could be doing to address those. And if that addresses the issue, maybe that's where those efforts stop. Otherwise, they would progress. So that's what I have for you in terms of formal presentation, overview. Obviously, we're here to answer any questions. We're happy to do so. We have some representatives here from Public Works, Dave Rogers and Doug Anderson, and obviously we've got Hung Dao from the City Attorney's Office to answer questions. Thank you.
Questions to you, Carlo. First, Mark.
Carlo, all this sounds nice, but who ultimately enforces this?
That's a great question. I mean, any time the city does something, you've got to have a plan for implementation, right? And so what we have currently, we've formed the Parking Management Advisory Committee, which is a multidisciplinary staff committee that meets to discuss more of the high-level parking issues. And what we've come up with is like I said, through this multidisciplinary committee, it's all very staff-oriented at this point. So the enforcement would be divvied up depending on the nature of the issue. So if the nature of the issue is that there are homes that are utilizing garages for uses that are not permitted in the code, well, that's a code enforcement issue. If the issue is vehicles that are parked for longer than 72 hours on a consistent basis on some streets, then that's going to be a police enforcement issue. And it's going to be run I would think essentially through the manager's office and coordinated through staff.
Well, here's the problem. So you got deputy sheriffs that are interested in catching bad guys and doing all that stuff. They're not going to be doing parking control. So essentially in the city of Lake Forest, we have no parking control. So we can put up all the signs we want and put, no parking. If we don't have an enforcement mechanism, it doesn't do any good. Now, I looked at the proposal they talked about, the cost of hiring a community service officer. Well, just about every other city has a parking control enforcement, and they're not community service officers. They're civilians that have been trained to write parking tickets, and the pay is commensurate with that. And so I would suggest maybe we look into, well, I guess the question would be, not necessarily through the Sheriff's Department, but could the city of Lake Forest hire 5, however many parking control people, and that's their primary function is parking control. They could be proactive, they could patrol for handicap parking, whatever. My contention would be that would more than pay for itself, and we wouldn't have to rely on a citizen calling and saying, hey, there's somebody illegally parked here, and doing that. They can follow the street sweeper and cite as it goes, and that would solve the problem. And as well as, I know we don't do it to gain revenue, but at least I think it would at least pay for itself. And if not that, can we look into that? I know the proposal, or they looked at a community service officer, but I would guess that's quite a bit more expensive than it would be to hire, a civilian, teach them how to ride. Heck, I was a cadet before I was a police officer, and I worked parking control, and I loved going out and writing parking tickets. Once you become a cop, you're not interested in that. But I'm just saying we could find somebody and people that's their primary function, and I think that would solve the problem. So I would suggest could look into that if we could just the city hire parking control, or do we have to go through? I don't think we would have to go through the Sheriff's Department per se. We could just have them working for our city. I don't know, maybe you guys could answer that, or I don't know. Anyway.
Have you found that in other cities?
Well, in other cities, I mean, when cities have their own police departments, they have different levels. They have cadets, and they have specific divisions maybe that are dedicated to parking. In our instance, which is not unique to South Orange County, we have the contract with the Sheriff's Department. So anything that's citation oriented, they generally prefer to address. However, we do have, for example, code enforcement officers that issue citations, and those are city employees, right? So I think the idea would be, or maybe the recommendation, if it's made as part of your motion, is consideration. We would do additional research and put that in the report that goes to the City Council. What we have today are 4, I would call them, we don't have our police services here, but they're traffic enforcement officers. So they're doing a couple of different things, right? So they're responding to collisions, they're writing accident reports, they're doing a number of things, and they are doing parking enforcement, right? But that only occurs when all of those other high priority issues aren't happening. So our parking enforcement currently is on a call basis. So our residents have to contact the sheriff, report that there's a vehicle they believe parked in an area, that vehicle's marked, and then the deputy comes back 72 hours later. If it's still there, they might receive a citation. So I think what you're looking for there, Commissioner Armando, is a more proactive sort of division maybe of the city that is dedicated to parking enforcement. We can look at that.
Yeah, maybe we could look into that, because just as I said earlier, we can have all the regulations and all the signage and everything, but if there's no enforcement mechanism, I mean, there's right around the corner from me, there's that street, and it says no parking between this sign and this sign, and there's 3 cars parked there every night, and they never get cited. But what I'm saying is, if you have a dedicated parking people that patrol that stuff, and they can write tickets, and then the problem is solved after, usually if you get a parking ticket, I guess I won't park there anymore, I'll have to find someplace else. So same thing with the street sweeping. You've got some streets that never get swept because cars are parked there all the time. If that's a problem, we can address that. But anyway, I think unless we have an enforcement mechanism, the signage really isn't going to do any good. But thanks.
I'd like to support your idea of a civilian parking enforcement individual, and I think it's such a good idea that I would encourage you to propose a motion, and we adopt a motion and we forward that
I think that might be a little premature because we haven't gone to public comments yet. But what we can do is we can take notes, and after our public comments, and once we bring it back up here, we can decide what we need consensus for to add to the city manager's office presentation. Would that be okay with you?
You're correct.
Okay. All right. So, does anybody else have any questions now of any of the staff?
I noticed in your matrix here you talk about increased commercial vehicles. What's your definition of a commercial vehicle?
Well, the commercial, for us, I mean, we might have a better legal definition if the city attorney has one, but a commercial vehicle would be defined as one that has a direct association with a business. So we're looking at, let's say, a delivery vehicle, and it's clearly marked as being a commercial vehicle that belongs to a specific business. So it's not someone's potentially personal transportation vehicle or doesn't serve a dual role. It is really just a commercial, let's say, delivery vehicle that is only used for the purpose of operating a business.
For the sake of it, so if somebody has a pickup truck with a magnetic sign on the side that says Joe's Plumbing, does that constitute a commercial vehicle?
I think Dave's got his hand up. He might have a quick answer for it.
Just, real quick, I think that in terms of dealing with commercial vehicles with this, we're looking at two types. One is specific to Bennett Ranch, but might also apply to other neighborhoods, is trying to move any commercial vehicle of any size, shape, or form that might be associated with, say, a business in the neighborhood out of that neighborhood. But what we have here in Lake Forest and in most South County cities, you have a definition of oversized commercial vehicle is what you're trying to kind of minimize those types of vehicles on the streets. I think what you're pointing to is the reality is every pickup truck in the state of California is registered commercial. We are not trying to take Bob's pickup truck that he uses to go out on the weekends and do things with off the streets. We're really looking at, in those situations, we're looking for oversized vehicles, flatbed trucks, high box trucks, overweight trucks, multi-axle trucks. By our specific definition in our municipal code, those are the oversized commercial vehicles we're looking to try and keep out of our residential neighborhoods. But as Carl pointed out, also that desire to get any commercial vehicle associated with a local business that really shouldn't be parking in a residential area also out of the neighborhood, but probably through other means.
Because I'm thinking, the guy that drives his pickup truck to work and he never uses it for anything else is one thing. The guy that's got a pipe rack on it, with 100 feet of pipe on it, that's a different.
Exactly.
To me, that is a commercial vehicle.
Correct. And those are the types of vehicles that would typically fall within these parameters that we have here in the city in terms of width, height, length, and multi-axle. Those are the ones we try to basically consider oversized and not have those park in residential neighborhoods.
So they would get cited for that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're kind of on big-size vehicles, trailers, family motorhomes. You talked about that, and I was a little confused. What is your proposal for me and my trailer that I want to load, and it's going to take me 2 days to load? Are you going to tell me?
No, I think, Dave, if you could help out a little bit, because he had a very big hand in helping to craft the parking ordinance. We're, again, trying to address a more specific concern that was raised in the instance of Bennett Ranch.
I might turn to our counterpart in the city attorney's office, but I think the goal is to eliminate people, in essence, storing vehicles on streets by having them attached to a vehicle. I think that's the biggest concern that we think we have out here. I don't think we created exceptions for loading your travel trailer in terms of this particular ordinance. So in theory, you could be cited for something like that. But its primary focus and the concerns that we've heard from the community are landscape vehicles with trailers attached, or people who have boats and boat trailers attached to their trucks and vehicles all the time. We have anecdotal evidence of someone who literally bought a vehicle for the sole purpose of attaching the boat to it and parking in front of their house, therefore technically not being in violation. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to eliminate by changing this trailer restriction out there.
So would a motorhome be not included in your restricted vehicle?
That's correct. In this particular case, the only modification we're discussing tonight is trailers, unmotorized trailers attached to vehicles.
But my neighbor has 3 of them, motorhomes, and they park them out there all the time, like hypothetical. And they store them there, because the cousin and the grandma each have one, and they just go right there in front of my house.
Right. We can have a discussion offline. None of the things we're talking about now change the existing ordinances that may apply to the motor home issue that you're describing. That may be something you may want us to look at also. That's potentially something you might want to add to your list if the commissioner as a whole would like us to also review our motor home restrictions and see if there's anything else that might need to be looked at.
Aren't there some cities that totally restrict travel trailer or motor homes parked on their city streets?
Yes.
And do you have an idea of what percentage?
I do not. In my prior life, we had an ordinance specifically designed to remove storage of RVs, although it did have an exception for loading and unloading, which is a very common activity.
Okay.
But there were steps taken.
But this whole thing that we're talking about really isn't addressing, it's only addressing the car that I have that has a travel trailer attached to it that's been parked in front of my home for 3 weeks.
Correct.
All right.
In terms of what the proposed modifications and changes to the municipal code tonight, it really is specifically related to vehicles or trailers attached to vehicles, because already you can't leave a trailer sitting there by itself. That's already illegal by our ordinance and can be cited. This was what we thought was kind of a loophole for the trailer being attached to the vehicle, so the changes being proposed tonight are only addressing that. We have not expanded the discussion to motorhomes, yes or no.
Maybe that's a little premature.
Not necessarily. It's something that if you would like us to consider, or just as the last recommendation was about an enforcement, if you feel perhaps that some of these parking issues could have been expanded a little to maybe at least look at our approach to RVs, I think you're certainly well within your parameters here tonight to have us potentially direct staff to look at some of that information also.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
Well, it's interesting. Where I live in Lake Forest, they have a trailer, boat, motorhome policy, which basically says you're allowed to park it in front of your house for 48 hours if you get a permit, and you can do that 4 times a year. And they enforce it. I guess the question is, if we were looking at something like that for the city of Lake Forest, is that practical? And is there a vehicle that we could use to do something like that, where they could get a permit and then they could legally be parked there for some short period of time?
I will only go based on my personal experience in my career. In my prior life, as I had mentioned, we had an ordinance that basically prohibited, in essence, the storage of those vehicles, but did allow for, don't quote me on it, but I think it was any 3 days out of any 7-day continuous period, you could park it in front of your home only. You couldn't park it across the street, couldn't park it down around the corner. And the whole idea was to try and create that opportunity to load and unload at the end of a trip. So
yeah, it's fair to be able to load and unload. I guess the question is how you enforce that. It sounds like it's a reasonable policy. I guess the question is how you enforce it.
Yeah, well, I think if again, I'll just use my very specific example in the city I previously worked for. The primary goal of that was to get stored RVs off the streets. I mean, we had situations where people, had the wheels covered and the stuff in the windows, and as part of that discussion, somebody brought up the very specific issue. Well, what about if I just want to load the one I have in storage? And so that exception was created. How you really enforce 3 days out of any given 7 days, you're right. You've either got to have some pretty picky neighbors or somebody out there, following them. So it accomplished its primary goal. There were no longer vehicles being stored on the streets. That exception was granted. In my 20-plus years there, I had maybe 1 or 2 individuals that felt that was being abused slightly, and we addressed those on an individual basis.
Well, in Bennett Ranch, does their homeowners association enforce rules on that type of thing?
Well, there are two different things at play here. Certainly, there's what the city can enforce through the vehicle code and other mechanisms, and then, of course, there's always in HOA-controlled areas that extra set of civil rules that only apply to people who have signed their CC&Rs as part of that. So I suspect that the Bennett Ranches of the world, Foothill, Portola, all of our major HOAs have those rules that you apply to in terms of the residents and the property owners within there who've signed those CCNRs.
But Dave, just for clarification, if it's a public street, which most of them, unless it's a gated community, the public street, the HOA doesn't have control over the public street. It would be the city that would regulate that.
They do if it's in your CCNRs.
No, I don't think so.
I think actually, I could defer to our city attorney, but
it's a public street.
They operate in different worlds. You're talking about citing someone in the vehicle code is different than getting a $50 fine from your homeowners association. So certain things, and this has been in my experience, we can certainly turn to our city attorney's office representative, but it's been my experience that it's okay for association to put some sort of fee or potential restriction on what you can park in front of your house, even if it's on a public street, because you're not asking the sheriff's department to enforce it. It's being enforced through your CCNRs, through your HOA.
Well, that's more or less true. I live in Parkland Estates in Lake Forest, and it's a public street, and the homeowners association does come in and enforce those types of things. They come out and they have to go get a permit. They're going to park up there for their 2 or 3 days, and if it stays there too long, they start getting cited for it. And eventually, we fine them.
Through your homeowners
Through the
association.
HOA.
Correct.
So I mean, there is a vehicle to do that through HOAs, but I suppose that has to be modified in their CCNR.
Correct. That's my experience, at least.
Okay, so does anybody else have more questions of staff?
Chair Fuentes, if I just may, I know that staff has referred to our city attorney's office a couple times. I just wanted to echo Mr. Rogers' comments in that we weren't, we helped prepare some of the tweaks to the parking ordinances, and no, we did not focus on RVs. One of the ordinances focuses on commercial parking, and the other focused on trailers attached to cars. So that's one of the first questions. Regarding the question about public street enforcement, generally the city will enforce all the parking requirements, speed laws, and so on and so forth on those public streets. I'm not aware of HOAs necessarily enforcing that, but we can always take a look at that. And I think that's about it.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to go to public comments if we have no more questions of staff. Oh, wait, we have one more question.
Yes, about 3 months ago, I think our focus was at Bennett Ranch, and at that time they were talking about resident permits and whatever, and we discussed it here, and it sort of came to an abrupt end, and I don't remember the conclusion. I don't think there was one. As a follow-through on that, I did go down and look at the area, and I did some interviews, and in fact I went all the way down to Front Street, and there is a tidal wave of parking that starts on Front Street, goes up Cherry, goes up Orange, crosses over to Geronimo, impacts that area, and ultimately impacts the Bennett Ranch. It's kind of really complicated to discuss it right now. I'd like to come in and talk to you guys, and we need to go out in the field and look at what's there and listen to the people who are telling us what's actually happening. I'd like to do that.
Staff would be more than happy to meet with any of the commissioners and go through that. I will tell you, we have done, I use we, Doug has done, I can't even count how many parking or license plate surveys to help us try and identify the origin of some of those vehicles. And we agree that at least, certainly initially when we started dealing or working with the current group of Bennett Ranch homeowners, some of the vehicles from the light industrial area, parking vehicles and doing other things within that residential neighborhood. As Carlo pointed out, some of our steps were designed to try and pull those vehicles out, whether by creating more parking in the areas, as you were pointing out, Cherry, Orange, that are heavily impacted by parked vehicles, but also working directly with the individual property owners and business owners,
kind of in the, hey, you need to be a better neighbor, please stop parking. Even though technically, legally, in many cases, the vehicles were not in violation of any vehicle code or even municipal code, we tried to work with them and say, you need to please not use these areas as storage or other for your commercial vehicles. And so that was one of our goals, is to try and minimize that impact in that neighborhood. A lot of the surveys that were done showed what we thought to be true, is that the vast majority of the vehicles that we're finding are from that general area and associated with properties within that general area. So in many cases, it's more cars than certain streets can accommodate, and therefore you have cars that are in areas in some of the single-family neighborhood.
And Commissioner Delmain, if I might just add, just one thing to reiterate, as Dave mentioned, we've done a lot of work with the residents out there in Bennett Ranch and Viejo West, and a lot of what you see here in this parking management matrix that we created is a result of those efforts, because have concerns. Some are related directly to parking and some are ancillary, but they can go together, and it speaks to the nuanced complexity of this issue. You have different land, same land use, but different types of development sometimes pushing and pulling against each other. In this area, you also have the light industrial area, and we've made a very concerted effort to try to pull some of those commercial vehicles out of the residential areas and back into the light industrial area. So it's a variety of factors. And so for that reason, what we've attempted to do here with these updated documents is to try to consolidate those efforts into one sort of piece that provides guidance to the staff, to the Planning Commission, to the council, to the residents, so that when we're looking at this issue together, we're identifying the number of ways in which residents are troubled by some of these issues, and the ways in which we might be able to incrementally, in an iterative way, try to address them. So it's as you've alluded to, it's pretty complex at times. So there isn't a one-size-all-fits solution. So what we try to do is create a process that allows for a variety of potential solutions to be pursued at once.
And I think this discussion tonight is a continuation of when we back and come up with something, and that's why we're here tonight discussing it. So, and then we can continue the discussion, or we can choose to send what they've come up with, maybe with some additions, to go straight to City Council, and then City Council can take it over. So that's kind of the process. And Tom?
I had one more question, because back when we were discussing Bennett Ranch the last time, there were a lot of complaints from the residents about the debris and the littering and the people dumping stuff out there, and you talk about that in your Tier 1 and Tier 2 portion of your matrix. Going back to my fellow commissioners' comments about enforcement, how do you enforce the littering issue, or how do you deal with that? Because that to me is a really complex one. I'm not sure how you deal with that.
Yes, as you've pointed out, sometimes the subtleties and the nuances involved in something like this. In three ways we looked at this. One, we do have our street maintenance crew going out there on, and the frequency I'd have to confirm, but at least once a month, doing literally kind of a hand pickup along the couple areas that were of most concern. Labor intensive, yes, but we think it's appropriate in a few areas where we're having ongoing issues with that in the public street side. We've also been working with the Bennett Ranch HOA to get some trash cans placed in the area that they will ultimately own and maintain, but we're hoping that by having facilities there that will get some compliance with people instead of dropping it out, the trash can's right there. So there's another way to look at that. The third one that we did pursue and couldn't quite reach a conclusion on, or in terms of a final choice of putting in street sweeping signs, we looked at the neighborhood as a whole, and even though there are some impacts on Cherry and Second, we didn't have sufficient impacts in terms of the neighborhood in terms of trying to do street sweeping restrictions. So one of our concerns was if we implemented on the Cherry and Second Street, we're just going to push it into the neighborhood, and that's really not what we want. So we kind of fell back on
maybe we should kind of continue to see if the trash cans are effective and our hand cleaning is effective. We could always revisit that at another time with the neighborhood at an appropriate time, but that's kind of how we approach the trash issue.
So part of it you're doing the cleanup, and part of it's got to be just education.
Correct.
Okay, so let's go to public comments.
Vincent Burke.
Good evening, Vincent Burke, Lake Forest. I'm a homeowner and board member of Viejo West Condominiums. I'm going to address two issues tonight, and one has to do with the proposal of 2 permits per residence in the permit streets. I think this might be counterproductive simply because there are a lot of people who get very attached to having their garages used for purposes other than keeping their vehicles, such as playrooms for the children, recreation rooms for the adults, and living quarters, okay? I've brought these issues to the attention of code enforcement with photographs, and over the last several years, the problem persists. Nothing's been done. Anyways, I think that these units, these residents should have all the permits that they need and park all their cars on those permit streets. Park them in front of the neighbors' houses if you need to. There's at least one city council member that is all concerned about strangers parking in front of his home. Well, that won't happen if your neighbor is parking in front of your home. It needs to be kept there. It needs to be enforced in a way such that a requirement would be made that these residents on the permit streets cannot park their vehicles on the non-permit streets within the impact zone. That impact zone on the non-permit is needed by residents such as at Viejo West, on Village Drive, Carefree El Toro. That can simply be enforced by notifying them that random checks will be made of license plates on those non-permit streets. Do it like a sobriety checkpoint. Every third or fifth vehicle, license plate gets checked, license plate gets checked. Randomly, whenever. This is where your CSO comes in handy, a dedicated officer. I like that. I'd also like the idea of maybe some subterranean parking over at the old Laguna Hills Nursery. That would be nice. Secondly, on the issue of garage use, Plainview Doctrine, garage use and observations and enforcement per Chapter 9.168. As I said, people use these garages for all sorts of reasons other than parking, including within Viejo West. However, I'm only one voice out of 5 on that board, and I've been outvoted on how to deal with that matter per this code. I understand the city is resistant to this kind of heavy-handed policy, surveillance government, but this needs to be applied across the board in the impact zone to everyone on the permit streets and to developments such as Viejo West, such as Village Drive, which is god-awful if you've ever looked through that. I see that my time is up. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Monica Liebeck.
Good evening. Thank you to Carlo, Dave, Doug, for everything that you guys have done. We really do appreciate it. I do want to, my name is Monica Levac, Lake Forest, Bennett Ranch. We are still having some parking issues. It has improved dramatically, and again, I thank all 3 of you. Not as bad as it was before. However, we are still seeing, I think we're still seeing vehicles being stored from the businesses. I was telling Carlo that there's a Porsche Cayenne S that's been parked on Cherry for 3 days. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'd put my Porsche on a city street not in front of my house. There's also a truck that has an ATV tightly bound or tightly backed up to a vehicle that I think is a commercial vehicle, Laguna's Carpet Cleaning. They've been parked there for 3 days. We're now starting to see people working on their vehicles. I've called it in twice in the last 2 weeks where people have got their hoods up, they're working on the vehicles. And when I call the sheriff's department, the dispatcher is like, well, maybe it's an emergency repair. I don't care what it is. We're now starting to see that, and that I think is unacceptable. We would like you to, if it's possible, take a look at the signage that's on Cherry right about Springwater, or Cedar Spring. I've talked to a couple of neighbors who say that they think that the signage is a little confusing. I would say it's on the south side of Cherry, the part that runs up along the path, that people seem to think that maybe there isn't any parking, that you cannot park beyond a certain spot there. And I haven't looked at it, so I don't know, but I have seen 2 cars regularly park on the north side of Cherry, which is, I think, great. But, maybe they're still not coming off of Cedar Spring. I've got people from Carefree that I actually kind of followed indirectly this morning. Person dropped 2 people off, picked up one on Glen Acres, picked up one on Cherry, and then they drove back into Carefree. And this is at like 5:30 in the morning. So there's still parking and coming up that way, and see my time's going. I do want to let you know that we did have, Bennett Ranch did have a neighborhood watch meeting, and we are telling everybody, Vince, to park in their garages or at least in their driveways, because the crime to vehicles would be on the downswing. I like the idea of street sweeping. If we can get that going, that'd be great, because I'm seeing on Cherry the leaves. And as far as the civilian parking enforcement officer, I will do it for free. I swear to you, I will do it for free. So that's my night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monica. You've been working hard out there. We really appreciate it.
Heiko Peschel.
And I will vie with her for that job. Heiko Peschel, Foothill Ranch, retired star. So when I was a star, sheriff's team of active retired seniors, we actually did a lot of code enforcement. On the other hand, we only worked when the city hall was open, so we only worked 4.5 days a week. Our biggest problem with code enforcement in my part of the world is they don't work weekends. They're Monday to Friday, every other Friday off. So weekends, when we get all our real estate folks with their signs and wonderful things like that, guess what? There's nobody out there to say. But that's not what we're here for. Okay, parking during sweeping. We can make it illegal to park during street sweeping. There are several areas in Lake Forest around Muirlands that have that. Having seen that, and it does work, it gets your streets cleaner. Up in our part of Foothill Ranch, if the street sweeper can get half of what's out there, he's lucky, because the people are parking. Like the gentleman said, they're using the garages for everything but parking cars. Permits on restricted streets, I would say 1 per household, simply because if you give more than 1 per household, you're taking away somebody else's parking place, what somebody else would think is their parking place. 72-hour max for attached trailers is the city code now. If you want to differentiate between motorhomes and attached trailers that are in many ways similar things, I'm going to object directly to the council, because my trailer is parked over here across the way, except when I use it. And I take it home, I load it, I go somewhere, I come back, I unload it. And if you say I can't do that, then I'm going to cry a lot. The other thing is, does anybody remember what that hotel is replacing in the long run? How about Captain Cream's?
Well, we'll end on that happy note. I always thought it was an ice cream parlor when I first moved here, but yeah. Yeah, I was very young, yes, I still am. Okay, so we're going to bring it back up here and maybe talk a little bit about, let me just ask consensus. Do you think we're ready to send this to City Council? Raise your hand if you, but we can add to it, we can subtract from it, but do you think tonight we're ready to send it to City Council? Okay, I get some shakes. Okay, so then I know we had the one consensus. Can we agree that we like the dedicated parking to patrol person for staff to look into that and add that to the presentation to City Council?
I'm not sure the person. I would rather have persons if we could, rather than, I mean, it's going to take more than just one person.
Well, that would be what they would figure out.
I guess that would be a start, but
yeah.
I would like to see a
parking dedicated parking patrol program.
Right. That are civilians, they're not, highly trained other than parking control and.
Yeah, we do find a budget.
And Monica.
Too.
Yeah, well, they can work out the scheduling, but yes, that.
Okay, so that's one addition. I guess, Carlo, we're talking to you.
Yes.
Is there anything, I'm not comfortable with sending the whole trailer thing. I misunderstood what he was saying, so I don't think it's necessary to throw in motorhomes at this time. But I'm only one vote. So does anybody else have any general, let's beef this up before we send it to City Council?
I have a question. Are we prepared to put your idea in the form of recommendations so we can package it up and send it forward?
Well, my thought was that the staff would do that.
Okay.
And but they've gotten our general, they've listened to us, and they usually do a very good job of taking what we've said and putting it into good, great English, at least.
Then I think, Carlo, you got the idea too, is can we look into hiring parking control for the city of Lake Forest, and it doesn't necessarily have to go through the sheriff's department or.
Right. I think the idea there would be a sort of a city parking division where
right.
Those individuals would have to have the ability to issue citations. So what we do is look around what other cities are doing relative to this. We talk to the sheriff's department because I want to make sure that anyone that's out there doing this is actually empowered to issue citations. Obviously, you know those distinctions, having served in law enforcement
right.
for a long time.
Well, I mean, when I was 18 years old and a cadet, I could write parking tickets, so I know it's not that. Must not be that
but
difficult.
Those were different laws way back then.
They still do it to this day. I mean, they have a lot of parking control guys in just about every other city, really. I mean, you can, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Coastal Night, you can go down the list. So
right.
That would be, if we need some guidance, they might be some good resources to find out how they administer their program. And we could conceivably have I think we have somebody assigned to the Traffic Bureau of the City of Lake Forest with the Sheriff's Department. They could oversee the supervision of this program, even though they work for the City of Lake Forest, I would think.
Right, and clearly there would be budgetary implications, so we'd want to put together for the council,
right.
along with this recommended package, some sort of number that speaks to what that would be, perhaps in a range, so that they have an understanding.
Right.
If they decided to move forward, that would be part of a future budget adoption process.
Right, because I saw the $130,000 figure for a CSO. I don't think it would be nearly that, so because of the job description would be significantly less than what maybe a CSO is. So anyway.
So we don't need to have this come back to us. We're trusting that Carla's going to put it together, but I think maybe you stipulate that this was an addition that we really haven't seen yet, but we had the idea, and that this is what you formulated for us.
Right. We put together an analysis that would talk about training and vehicles and staffing and what other cities are doing to give the council an idea.
Great.
So if you were comfortable moving forward, we would need to know first, are you, for example, comfortable with everything we presented? And then
that's kind of our discussion right now, and was doing add-ons. Do we have any more add-ons?
Just on the back, when he mentioned about stars, I don't know if that would be a possibility. Train a few of them to write parking tickets. I don't know if that would be I don't know, but that might be it. I mean, they say they do some code enforcement or whatever. we've already have that program instituted. Might it possibly be, they could be trained to write parking tickets and know, do the enforcement thing? I think that might be a possibility too. And
That would be part of our evaluation. Currently, the STARS don't have any citation authority, so we would explore those alternatives.
And they might be able to pick and choose who on STARS would be better at it than others or something. Anyway.
It's time to get creative.
Okay, any other additions to the proposal that Carla's office has presented tonight? All right, so then is there anything in the report that you have a problem with that you would want to maybe not consider? And I think at this point, we would have to say, since it was brought up, the 2 cars and the third additional, I like the 2 and the 1 extra. Are you all comfortable with the 2+1 on the permits? I think that's a no. There's no no's, so I think that's a yes. So is there anything?
I guess the question is, if they're using the driveway, that should get at least 1 car off the street. And if you issue them 2 parking permits, then they have no incentive to park in their own driveway.
Well, except if you have 3 kids and they all have cars, then yeah, there's incentive. I mean, not everybody is that perfect leave it to
And I understand that too, but I'm just trying to. I'm comfortable with the 2. The third one, I'm not sure.
Well, but the third they would have to show some great reason for it, like it's grandma's van that is handicap access, and the others have a real car. So they'd have to show something.
So by showing, you mean they'd have to have the car registered to that address?
Well, all the cars have to be registered to that address, but what was happening is they had like 8 cars registered to the one address, and they'd get 7 permits, and so that was the problem.
Well, I agree with that. I think there has to be a limit. I just question how we implement it. That's okay.
Well, I have great confidence in these guys to implement it.
I think they'll do that too.
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about it.
So is there anything else that we want to pull out?
I did have one question, and I'll quit. You talked about under Phase 3 that if you were going to implement permit parking, you'd want to do it by petition or ballot for 67% of the affected property owners. How would you implement that?
That is actually part of the current policy. It's ultimately what our real change was. In order to initiate the process, we're asking for a consensus from the neighborhood. That's different than in previous times. Literally, if you took the language literally, a single individual could say, hey, I want permit parking, and staff would go off and spend thousands of dollars. So it's on the front end. The back end is if we get to a neighborhood that we are unable to resolve their issues and the impact still meets the threshold, we then actually conduct a vote. And the vote is of the homeowners, and that 67% threshold is current and would be continued.
Is there a legal basis for the 67%?
It is a discretionary. Every city does it a little bit differently. That's very similar to, in my case, my previous city was very similar in terms of percentage. But a supermajority, and the reason you want a supermajority is you don't want to have a situation where it's 50% plus 1, and then a homeowner moves out, and then the guy next door says, well, that guy moved, now I want to vote again, back and forth. And it's a number that creates, obviously a overriding consensus, and is therefore probably a very stable thing going forward, so you don't have to keep constantly looking at it.
That's correct.
Council, what's your experience been with getting 67%? You got it in Bennett Ranch?
We have several neighborhoods, I think up to 30 streets and various neighborhoods that have all met that criteria.
And that's correct. What Mr. Rogers was saying, that it is a discretionary number. We've seen it similar in other cities. Some have higher even percentages. So it is about 67%, give or take.
But that's about the average you've seen in most of the cities that you're working with?
I've probably seen about 3 or 4 other cities, and yes, it's about that. In some other cases, I've seen about 75%, but it's about 67, a little bit more or less.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so, Robert, you've been so good at motions tonight. What are you thinking?
I ran out of gas.
Well, I'm going to make the motion then that we send this parking permit program onto City Council with the idea that we will look into a dedicated parking patrol program, for lack of a better terminology. And thank you very much. That's my motion.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. We'll vote. Did we vote? Yeah. Oh. Motion carries 4-0. And I'd just like to add is it Vince? So I'm just thinking maybe you should go talk to Mr. Cox and get a hotel at Laguna Hills Nursery, because then we can get that parking for you. There you go. All right, so we're moving right along to... Thank you very much, guys. That was great.
We are moving to item 7.
Oh, we are. Annual reporting of the Planning Commission to the City Council.
Yes, I have just a short overview for you. Starting in 2015, the City Council adopted a policy for the annual reporting of the Planning Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission to the City Council. So once a year for each of our commissions, we ask the Commission to identify major accomplishments over the preceding year, and for the Commission to develop consensus around which of these accomplishments they want to report to the City Council. And it's also the opportunity for the Commission to together decide if there's anything they'd like to request from the City Council in terms of direction regarding any specific topic for which the Commission desires guidance from the Council in order to do their job more efficiently. So in order to help you out, as we've done in past years, we put together a listing. We kind of broke it up by some of the big development categories that we have, like Parkside or the Baker Ranch community. And this is kind of a summary of the types of applications that the Commission looked at. And so again, we're asking for you to find some consensus on what you'd like to report as what you consider your major accomplishments this year, and then maybe discuss amongst yourself if there's anything you would like to ask the City Council for guidance on. This report will be presented to the City Council at a subsequent meeting, and the Chair will attend the City Council meeting and present this information. That's all I have.
Okay, so let's try and go through this. The recommendations to the City Council well, let's start with what we've done, which would start with that on our page 946. Baker Ranch Plan Community, Parkside, Select Development. Does anybody have any additional, I'm sure Gail has listed them all, but the one thing that I thought might be a good addition to show that we are doing good work here is we've had a few items that have been called up to City Council, and I think it might behoove us to say, so we had 3 or 4 items called up to the City Council, and in all cases, I believe, our findings were supported. Do you like the idea of including that in the report? Okay, so I'll maybe just get the facts on that, Gail. That'd be great. I think it's really important, though, and you know, I'm looking at you, Commissioner D'Almeida, because you have always been proactive in what we can be doing and what we want to be doing. Do you have any ideas that you want to send off to the council?
Yes, thank you. Oh, check's in the mail. Thank you very much. We make recommendations to the Planning Commission, and recently we approved the Hampton Homewood hotel complex with 208 units, and tonight we're recommending to the City Council that they approve the Springfield hotel project at 102 units. It's a 310 new units for the city. The city right now has about 1,100 rooms available within the corporate limits, And if the council goes forward with this, we will increase supply by 27%. At the same time that demand is likely to remain static or increase at about a rate of 10%. So that means that in the next 15 months, potentially, there could be some economic difficulties with some of the existing hotels as well as the new ones. And what I would recommend is that the city look at the economic development group and that we double down on trying to figure out how to increase the demand for hotel rooms within the city. And those are my thoughts.
Okay, so we want to ask the city to do a study or to figure out how to increase demand for people to come and stay in hotels in Lake Forest?
Yes, just to make our own staff conscious at the with economic development. You know, I don't know what kind of magic they work and how they do it, but I think it's important for us as a city, for the hotel properties that exist as well as the new ones coming on board, that we try to double down to increase the amount of demand within the city. I don't know exactly how you do it. I don't know if it can be done, but we need to, instead of sitting around waiting for something to say, oh my God, look what happened, we ought to look forward to try to figure out how we might increase the demand.
I just question if that's our responsibility or if that's the business owner's responsibility.
Yeah, I kind of was thinking that. I like the idea, but I wonder if they're, you know, Marriott's marketing department would be the ones that would put out and promote their hotels.
And since people are building new ones, they must be doing, they must be getting A-pluses on that.
I would add that our economic development group, they do various videos and promotionals, and one area that they're looking at since the opening of the city's sports park is how we can better get the word out that you can, if you're playing in a tournament, that we have everything you need right here. So that's an example of how we're kind of promoting a city facility. But yes, Chair Fuentes, you're right. In our meetings with the hotel developers, they're very strong on the market and the demand, and that's why they're proposing the hotel. So they've certainly done their own market research. Also in terms of the city's general plan, which will be starting in the next year, some of the background studies that we do will be on demand factors for hotel uses, for retail uses, so we'll be studying all of the market trends, and I think we'll get a lot of information from that exercise when we go through the general plan.
So you would say that the rather good idea from Commissioner D'Almeida might already be in progress.
Yes, yes, the city is working, economic development is working on some marketing videos, and we're also, we just met with them earlier in the week. They're also working on kind of just marketing the Lake Forest lifestyle, so something, we're updating the business attraction video, so economic development is very active in looking at those things.
Yeah, the purpose is served in that we've just discussed it.
Great.
And I'm satisfied with that. And I understand there may be another hotel project coming forward?
Potentially a fourth hotel, although we haven't heard from the applicant. Originally, it was the old former City Hall site right beside the Holiday Inn, but certainly a great deal of demand for hotels. You know, we talked about the 80 to 100,000 employees that are in the spectrum really driving a lot of the demand for the hotels, and also just the great location to kind of centralize your vacation, and the fact that all of the hotel stock that we have in the city is so old. So these new limited service hotels are very popular.
Right, and the site of where that former hotel was, I believe it was, is that in the process for?
Yes, that should be before the commission in the month of February.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So you had any other ideas that we want to ask City Council to, I hear Tom clicking, he's going to click and talk.
This whole issue with the Gateway Center raised an issue that I was talking over with one of my sons who's in the commercial development business, and some of the cities different method of calculating the parking space based on not just square footage, but on the number of seats that exist in the restaurant and the restaurant's demand factor. So if you have something like a Starbucks, which generates an unusually large traffic demand, you adjust for that in your parking, in your code to deal with that. And because they're finding in some cases, some restaurants have a lot more seats per square foot than others do. And to calculate the traffic and the parking, based solely on square footage, may be kind of a misnomer. And to me, that's an interesting thought, because I know he pointed out to it, like the city of Danville has an alternate code, whether it's either square footage or the number of seats in the restaurant, and the largest number prevails. So it's things like that that we might want to look at and say, well, yeah, in certain high concentration retail, maybe it makes sense to look at a slightly different standard as opposed to a strip mall that doesn't get as much traffic. So
the problem that I see with that, which it seems like it's forward thinking and a good idea, but let's say that there's an existing restaurant, hotel, or a whole retail center that burns down, and then you've got this new code that we've changed to, then they can't rebuild at what they were. So as a...
But there's grandfather clauses to take care of that.
I don't know that there is.
But you can add it. It's not that you couldn't add one. You could.
No, I believe the way our non-conforming ordinance, if the center is destroyed by more than 25%, anything that's rebuilt complies with code. So we would call it existing non-conforming, but that would be of grave concern to businesses to have a new type of new parking code requirements put in place, especially when you have a built-out city. We don't anticipate seeing a lot of new development. The Gateway was probably our last retail center. We probably, the one or two small retail centers here, but we've largely redeveloped every retail center in the city, and we don't feel we have parking problems. I mean, the Gateway Center, given its uniqueness and its one point of access along Rockfield, and its regional draw is certainly different than other centers, but we're not experiencing problems. Over at the Orchard, we have Lucille's, we have Brew Grill, we have a variety of restaurants and things like that. So
I would agree, it's a different situation over there. The Gateway is kind of unique, but I don't know that we have a way to deal with something unique, is my only comment.
Just one other question, maybe Gail, you could answer this with regards to, we know we find out the parking based on square footage of the business or whatever. Theoretically, something like Starbucks conceivably would not require any parking because it's all drive-through. Do we have some sort of way to figure that kind of stuff out when it's a specific? I mean, I suppose there are some places inside where you can sit, but for the most part, when it's a drive-through, do we have any way of, when we approve a business for when it's mostly drive-through, is there any consideration or of some formula that we use to figure that out?
I think the closest example to something like that, we're going to be looking at a very unique Dunkin' Donuts that doesn't have a dining room. So sometimes you have something unique and they'll ask for consideration, but by and large, the 1 per 200 is the way cities have gone. And we have to keep in mind, retail is changing so much so fast, and this whole driverless car and Uber and so many other things factoring in that it makes it really difficult. The other thing that we see is uses that change. We've had a lot of coffee uses come and go, and so you may have a super popular coffee use. I think we once had a Starbucks on Lake Forest and Muirlands, and then it becomes a different type, and it may not have the same demand. So a lot of factors that go into play there, but perhaps some kind of regional access or taking a look at its location instead of creating blanket regulations that apply to all centers where we're not experiencing problems in other centers. It could be, maybe something, but keep in mind, the commission, in our parking code, it says, here's the parking requirements, and they're only the minimum. If the commission feels parking should be increased, they can ask for more parking. So I think if you've got a unique center and you see some unique trend or something, maybe our code will let you deal with that. Again, without impacting and getting into this non-conforming and creating all new standards, and maybe there's a way to get to the end that you're looking for.
And the whole point is just to have some flexibility to deal with unique situations. I mean, it's not obviously trying to burden anybody unnecessarily.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when we approved in 2014 the Gateway Center, could we have asked for more parking? Or could we have required more parking, Gail?
I believe you could have.
Could we have required more ins and outs?
Well, yeah, the access, I don't think we could have accommodated any more because they have to be spaced,
Right.
Appropriately. And we actually added, in 2014, you added the signalized access, so you improved access and reoriented the drive aisles in that center and made a number of changes.
Well, my point is that if we need to add more, we can. And we certainly got more tonight with the extra 53 spaces, so.
Right, and there could be instances where, based on some unique factors, you don't need as much, so it can go either way. So I said we have a proposed Dunkin' Donuts that's really unique. We've never seen it. I think it's 900 square feet. It's really a unique use, and we've got an operator who's moving cars every 20 seconds. So you have the world's fastest drive-through going on, and so there are always unique situations.
Okay. Well, how about this? How about if somebody thinks of something and we have this presentation to the City Council prior to our next meeting, you email, we can get consensus, or does it have to be a public meeting?
The agenda is itemized for tonight, so it'd be best that commissioners come to a consensus tonight rather than doing it.
Well, at this
outside
point,
the agenda.
we have a great report. We're going to add the callbacks, and I think that it's on the agenda at City Council that they're thinking of adding parking to our plate, so maybe we'll be busy enough. So unless anybody has any other great ideas to ask the City Council that we would like for them to look into or that we're concerned about, I think we'll just go with it as presented by Gail with the one addition. There's a lot of yeses. So do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
All right. Come on.
Make a motion that we,
Robert.
I'll make a motion that we submit the report as presented.
I second that.
There you go. All right, let's vote. Well, thank you. I think this was our longest meeting. Motion carries 4-0.
It was a great meeting, well run, and congratulations to the commission. That's a nice list of accomplishments. We really did a lot over the last year, and when we put it all down, it does really show what the commission's been working on.
Would that be the director comments?
That would be the start of my comments.
Okay.
I really want to make this a long meeting. No. But you're right. As Chair Fuente said, the next City Council meeting is January 17th, and that will be the night they're interviewing for Planning Commission, new planning commissioners. So I know both Commissioner Armando and Fuentes have submitted applications. Good luck to all candidates. And also at that meeting, as Chair Fuentes indicated, there's going to be a report on the possibility of creating a traffic/parking commission with different alternatives being considered. One that's been talked about and is included in the report would be potentially a new role for the Planning Commission and going back to 2 meetings a month. But you can see the report online and read that. I believe the report's up now. It should have been up, yeah. So you can go online, read that report, and we'll report back as to what action the council takes. That's all.
Okay. Our city attorney.
No comment.
Great. Tom, do you want to start?
No comments.
I think I'll have no comments.
I've made all my comments earlier. I'm good. Thank you.
Well, thank staff for making complicated projects easier to understand and also allowing us to take defensible positions with the public of how we evaluate these projects and how we reach decisions. I think that's very important. The other thing I want to lobby for is the idea of the Planning Commission actually dealing with traffic, because we deal with traffic, I think we understand it. And if we could have maybe some portion of our responsibilities is dealing with traffic. We didn't get into really all the issues around the project we just approved, because it wasn't really part of the project. Most of the problems are outside. And just to give you an example, we may be at the point where the intersection of Rockfield and Lake Forest surpasses the amount of traffic at Rockfield and El Toro. If you look at just the straight through traffic going through, there's still more traffic going through El Toro. But if you look at the turning movements, they're actually greater at Rockfield and Lake Forest. And I think because we deal with these projects, we look at what's coming, I think we're capable of looking at these and evaluating the traffic issues that we have in the city. And with that, I'll stop.
Okay, with that, I believe we are going to adjourn to the February 9th meeting. Thank you very much, and good night.